This is Rogers TV.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, December 15th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, under a freezing rain warning, it's -5. It's -3 in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. An Ottawa family doctor says those who are fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and have passed the 6-month mark should not have to wait to get their booster shot. Here's City News reporter Prushka Gopalkista.
If you are eligible to get your third dose, now is the time to book that appointment. At least that's what Dr. Neely Kaplan-Mirth is urging residents to do. She says that working to get everyone vaccinated as quickly as possible should be the goal.
The struggle, though, and the hunt and the waiting doesn't make any sense. It should be that we're working 24/7 to give everybody the vaccine who is past their 6-month mark.
Now, with all the delays of those trying to get those COVID-19 appointments, Dr. Mirth adds that the province should have rolled out the booster shots much earlier. Pirishka Gopalkista, City News.
Now, Ontario's Premier, Health Minister, Solicitor General and top doctor will all hold a media briefing this afternoon at 2 o'clock. An announcement expected about the COVID-19 booster doses. Now, the health experts want the province to expand the access to all adults. Yesterday, Dr. Kieran Moore, the province's top medical officer, says the variant will become dominant soon, and he would be making recommendations to the government on province-wide policies. City News Time, 9:01. With this freezing rain expected this afternoon, more to the west and north, the county of Renfrew declaring a significant weather event. They say that will impact your travel and services throughout the municipality due to the freezing rain. Now, here is your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, we're okay through the morning. It's the afternoon. Heads up for some freezing rain late afternoon. Could see 2 to 3 centimeters of snow and ice pellets, some ice accretion as well. Greatest chance of that freezing rain for areas near the Quebec border. The high today +1. Rising temperatures overnight with periods of light rain. For today, the high late this evening, +1.
And right now, under that freezing rain warning, it's -5 degrees in Ottawa, -3 in Smiths Falls. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the premiers are worried this rapidly spreading Omicron variant of COVID could strain the healthcare system right across the country. The leaders held a conference call last night to talk about border and travel restrictions that the feds could impose, trying to help slow the spread of COVID. They agree vaccinations are the key to moving beyond this pandemic, but have not released any details on whether the government plans to change any of the travel rules. City News Time, 9:03. 4 Canadian Armed Forces members are going to court today. They're challenging the mandatory COVID-19 vaccine order. They're arguing it violates their constitutional rights. They are opposed to getting the vaccine for different reasons, including concern about its long-term safety and on religious grounds as well. Now, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Wayne Eyer's order, allows for exemptions on medical, religious, or human rights grounds, but a lawyer for the force say their requests were all rejected. The service member claimed the threat of dismissal would be extreme. Stats Canada says the annual pace of inflation held steady in November, the consumer price index rising 4.7% compared with 1 year ago. The result does match the year-over-year increase in October. That was the largest gain for the consumer price index since February of 2003. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's got the news and the views.
He's got views on the news.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
All right, you just heard from Andrew on inflation. Let me give you a little more details. 4.7%. That is the so-called cost of living increase. If you are not getting a 4.7% increase in whatever you're taking home these days, you are losing ground. You are losing ground. And with that cheery news, good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Yeah, it's a Wednesday morning. Inflation rate out. Like I said, it's another doozy number. That's a top line number, 4.7%. That's the one that's going to get all the headlines, and it's for November. So it's kind of looking in the rearview mirror, right, since it's the middle of December now. And these are prices that are compared to the same prices this time last year when there were lockdowns. And the vaccination program was really in its infancy. So let me run down some of what StatsCan says goes into that 4.7% number. Gasoline up 43%. 43% year over year. Food prices up 4.4%. Furniture prices, higher prices for furniture, up 8.6%. Now, for some reason, I've never quite understood why. It has to do with price volatility. I get that. But StatsCan and economists, they always like to use this number, core inflation. Core inflation. Well, if you don't include food and gasoline, if you don't drive and don't eat, the inflation rate is actually this. So this time around, StatsCan says if you take out just gasoline, the inflation rate is 3.6%. Okay? But don't you wish you could do that? Don't you wish you could do that, Tim? I'm just not going to use gasoline anymore. I guess some people can do that. They have electric cars, whatever the case might be. But that's not the story for the vast majority of people. Not yet anyway. We're just not in utopia just yet. But usually these economists take out food prices too, because food prices can be volatile, and the economists and statisticians, they say, take out food and fuel and the number is this. I always thought that's a ridiculous way to look at things, because the normal lives of everyday people actually, need food and fuel. You just can't strip them out. I'm not going to drive anywhere, and I'm going on a hunger strike. Take that, Statistics Canada. But again, and once more, prices in all 8 major components on a year-over-year basis in November for your Consumer Price Index were higher. They were all higher. Okay? Meaning the inflation rate is broad-based. Okay? It's more than just a 40% increase in the price of gasoline. When it comes to higher prices, very few places offering a reprieve right now. Cell phone bills, one of them. Cell phone bills are actually lower year over year. In this report this morning, Statistics Canada points it out for all to see and says Canadians are losing purchasing power. It's that old line, a dollar doesn't go as far as it used to. Well, it's true. It actually goes out of its way to show you that it's true in this report. Inflation at 4.7%. Wages are going up. Okay, because of the tight labor market, 1 million job vacancies in Canada right now. That pushes wages up. But still not enough to keep up with inflation. Wages grew year over year 2.8%. Inflation 4.7% by way of the Consumer Price Index. You and me and all of us, we are losing our purchasing power with each passing month. Groceries up the most in 6 years, driven by fresh veggies. Notably, David, cucumbers, mushrooms, and broccoli. Which I'm not really fond of any of them either, so it doesn't really matter. But up 6.4%. I could save some money and not eat those. Fresh or frozen beef up 15% year over year. And the jump in furniture prices is being blamed on higher delivery costs, which in part has to do with fuel, but also tariffs. I recall reading a news story that there are now tariffs on furniture made in Vietnam. And that causes higher prices for people in Canada. Look, we're going to have coverage of this story throughout the morning. Coming up later on the Rob Snow Show. When you think these days of politics and inflation, who do you think of? Who do you think of? Oh, I think that's right. The member from Carleton, the finance critic for the official opposition, from the Conservatives, Pierre Poilievre. What time is that, David, that Mr. Poilievre is?
11:15.
11:15. Okay. All right. That's good. Also on the program this morning, Rachel Muir. I had a chance to speak with Rachel Muir this morning, a registered nurse at the Ottawa Hospital, but also the union president of the local for the RNA at the Ottawa Hospital, the union for the nurses. And I mean, for our nurses at the Ottawa Hospital, they are, they're stressed out, they're burned out, they're short-staffed, and what little respite they have had from COVID-19 might not last long, and it could be the calm before the storm. There has been a decades-long nursing shortage in Ontario. There is Bill 124 that the nurses are not happy about at all. That's the legislation that caps any wage increase, any salary increase for nurses and a bunch of other workers in the public sector, caps any salary increases at 1% a year. That was brought in as a spending restraint measure shortly after the Ford government took over from the Liberals. So that's courtesy of Doug Ford. Inflation is running at 4.7%, as I mentioned. We give our nurses a 1% raise and then pat them on the back and call them heroes. And now the nurses, they're all wondering what's going to happen at my workplace because of Omicron, the Omicron variant. We're going to get into all of that. Rachel Muir coming up in just a few minutes from now. And every morning on the Rob Snow Show, it is the Talkback Hour. And that's an hour of opinions, your opinions. It's an hour of phone calls, your phone calls. You call me, I don't call you, between 10 and 11 o'clock. The call-in line is 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310 this morning. Restrictions. Okay? Restrictions are coming, ladies and gentlemen. You might not be happy about it, but you have to get ready for it. There's going to be something announced today, as we've been reporting here at City News this morning. Something's coming about international travel. It's been well telegraphed to the media over the last 24 hours. Something on international travel to be announced by the Trudeau government. Premier Ford is having a cabinet meeting and then a news conference this afternoon. It's not supposed to be about new health measures, new restrictions. It's supposed to be about booster shots, but he will most certainly be asked about restrictions by the news media. The Chief Medical Officer of Health for the province of Ontario, Dr. Kieran Moore, wants any restrictions to be province-wide, not region by region, but province-wide, uniform across the province. Some regions are not waiting for the Ford government to move. They're already moving, places like Kingston and Windsor, Essex. And some provinces are already reimposing restrictions, like Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, all because of Omicron. It was a hot issue yesterday, and I want to get right back into it today. More public health measures. Are these the right moves for government to be making right now? Should governments be doing more? Be even more severe with their restrictions if Omicron is a major threat to a fragile healthcare system? Or is all of it nothing but a bunch of overblown hype? Share your opinion. Be prepared to defend it on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
The Rob Snow.
Papa Jack was started 14 years ago, really by accident more than anything. A friend of mine had bought a grocery store, a popcorn machine was in there. He didn't want it. I ended up by buying it. My family thought I was nuts. When I first said, come and pick up this popcorn machine, my son said, what the? Heck for. I won't use exact words. But anyway, we started, and it just kept on growing and growing. But at the time, I was the only one selling popcorn in Ottawa. But we persevered as a family, and here we are. So it's been very, very rewarding for my family and myself, and to see our brand name Papa Jack. And Papa Jack came out of, I wanted something that was going to be very bilingual. So Papa, and then in Ontario, everybody called me Jack, even though my name is Jacques. In Quebec, it's fine, it's Jacques, but in Ontario, it was always Jack. So we married the two together, Papa, Jack. With the store that we have on Thurston Drive, it basically, the factory's in the back. If you come into the store, you can see how the popcorn is being made during the week. So it adds an extra layer of, you can see the sanitation, you can see how we do it. It's not like making popcorn. Most people thought when I started this, I was making popcorn in my garage or in my basement. No, never did. It was started in this building, in the back of the building, and then we kept growing and growing until what we have now. My daughter and my son came up with a brilliant idea to do a fundraiser online. So basically all people have to do is to register here, and we give them a special code number. And with that code number, they tell their friends or their neighbors, everybody, to buy online from us with that code number. And then at the end of each period, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, then we'll pay them a 20% of all the businesses that we got through that code number. One thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the Ottawa people who have supported us and support local businesses. It sometimes people, you know, they talk about buying locally. Now it becomes that much more important to buy locally, to support your local businesses, because not too many of them are going to survive this. We're fortunate that we're so far so good.
No Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
As it is right now, it's not too bad, the situation at the Ottawa Hospital with COVID-19, but there's certainly anxiety that could change because of the Omicron variant. So joining us right now to give us a better sense of things is Rachel Muir, registered nurse at the Ottawa Hospital and the bargaining union president of the local of the Ontario Nurses Association. And good morning.
Good morning.
How would you describe the mood right now for you and your co-workers? Do you feel like it could be a calm before the storm?
I think that describes it very well, actually. There's also a sort of a mood of just resignation of here we go again. This is the fourth time we've been through this, and once again we're looking at changes that will affect our work lives and our home lives.
What kind of changes?
Well, there's always the potential for staffing changes. As we know, the Omicron virus is very virulent. We're not sure how severe it is yet, and information is still coming out on that. But that's going to have a big impact potentially on staffing again, which, as it trickles down, affects our ability to admit people, our ability to provide surgeries and care, because if our staff are unwell, they're out for 14 days, which when you're already in crisis with staffing, to lose more staff just makes that crisis significantly worse.
Okay.
So we're looking at loss of time off again. We're looking at increased patient loads, the inability to provide the care we have all been trained to give.
When you say staffing right now is a crisis, can you maybe explain in some detail for our listeners what that means, what that looks like?
So that looks like never having enough staff on, where every unit runs short every shift, which means our nurses are doing more with less, and the less being physical people to do that care. We're looking at the potential for changes in staff mixes, which, as we know historically, is not good for patients. It's been proven time and time again that a predominantly RN workforce, especially in a large tertiary acute care hospital such as the Ottawa Hospital, is better for patient outcomes. They become well sooner. They leave with better tools and knowledge to continue their recovery. And when you can't provide them with that RN expertise and knowledge, it's detrimental to them. And that's what we're looking at. We do not have enough nurses, plain and simple.
Now, I've been hearing that for a long time. We don't have enough nurses. I've been hearing that for 30 years, maybe 30 years, okay? But I'm wondering, so it's not new. It's not new. A nursing shortage in Ontario, not new. But I'm wondering how much it has worsened over the last almost 2 years because of the pandemic.
Significantly. So we were experiencing sort of a slow trickle, like a drip, drip, drip kind of loss. And that loss has turned into a torrent. We're losing nurses who are midpoint in their career. We're losing nurses who were going to stay 3 or 4 more years and then retire. And this, along with everything else we have experienced over the last 2 years under this Ford government, have made that a torrent, and it's now at crisis. It was bad, but now we are at crisis point.
And Bill 124, the wage cap,
has not helped.
Not helped, I don't imagine. No. Especially, today's the inflation report came out this morning. So, with the inflation the way it is in real dollar terms, a lot of people are taking a pay cut, and that would include our nurses, right? So, and
the other thing is we always focus on the monetary aspect of Bill 124, but it's not that alone.
What else is it?
It's the utter disrespect that bill has shown us. That while our government consistently says nurses are heroes, we couldn't have done this without you, what a bill like Bill 124 and actually Bill 195 as well, which prolongs the emergency orders when they're not always necessary, just show total disrespect and disregard for the very people who hold our healthcare system together.
Okay. When a nurse, you say, nurses are leaving, the ones that don't retire, the ones that don't quit, because I know you've mentioned in the past that is happening, but are they also getting better offers? It would seem to me the jurisdictions all over the place want nurses, so you would think, can they get better jobs elsewhere? Can they get better?
They can. Yeah. Yes, they can. They're moving to, some of them are moving to the States where they're being given better offers. Yeah. Just to move to another province where maybe the cost of living is slightly less or your work-life balance is better. That's where they're going. They are leaving. And we in Ontario, we already had the lowest nurse to population ratio in the country. And we don't have recent figures, but it wouldn't surprise me to learn that nurse to patient ratio has dropped in the last 2 years and exacerbated the problem. We're 22,000 nurses short in Ontario. Wow. It's going to take a lot of years to recuperate those numbers.
Okay. What's it like these days at the Ottawa Hospital? Whenever I go to the hospital, mercifully, knock on wood, I haven't had to be there in a while, and I hope it stays that way. It's, even before COVID-19, it's always kind of managed chaos. You're kind of looking around, it's kind of nurses are not lazing around. If anything, they're run off their feet. What's it like right now, and what are you being told to prepare for because of Omicron, the Omicron variant?
We're not actually being told a lot at the moment because, and that is because basically it's evolving on a daily basis. But nurses are preparing for the worst. They're preparing to be redeployed to different units again. They're preparing to experience increased patient workloads. So we're sort of braced for the worst, but nurses are amazing people. They would not let that show in the care that they're giving to their patient population. They never, ever reflect what is going on behind the scenes onto the care they give, which is why I think the general public don't realize just how much of a crisis and how critical things are, because nurses don't allow them to see that. They provide care and facilitate their return to wellness. They don't stand there and go, staffing is horrible. We can't get to you. You're going to have to do this. No, I can't do that.
Yeah.
We just don't do that. But the flip side to that is when we crash and burn, we crash and burn. And that's demonstrated by nurses leaving the profession. They are showing this.
It's like burnout and over and out and see you later, I'm done.
Yes, that's it. Right? And the burnout is huge. It's huge.
Yeah, it's sad to hear. Look, I don't want to leave people with the impression that, oh my gosh, the last place I want to be is at the Ottawa Hospital. I'm going to be surrounded by stressed out nurses. What would be your advice to patients right now? Or people who may need to go to the hospital but might think, that's the last place I want to be, or something like that.
If you need to go, you need to go, because delaying that merely makes your state of health worse, which means the care you're going to need is going to be more acute and more critical. So if you need to go, you need to go. But go recognizing that the nurses who are caring for you are stressed, they're tired, they're overworked. They will consistently give you the care you need, and they will give it to you with a smile on their face. You will not see as I said, what's going on behind the scenes. But if you can get the care you need elsewhere, if it's not critical, if it's the things that we've traditionally gone to emergency units for because we don't have a family doctor, if you can find that care at a walk-in clinic or an urgent care clinic, please try and do that and try and reduce the load in our emergency departments and in our critical care departments, and ergo on our units within the hospital.
Rachel Muir.
And recognize them that they're hardworking. Sorry,
absolutely, that's fine.
Just recognize them and be patient.
Yes.
Be patient with us. We're doing the best we can with what little we have.
Okay. Rachel Muir, I really thank you for your insight this morning, for sharing it with our listeners. We're thinking about you and all the nurses in Ontario. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, December 15th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 4 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's minus 2. And here's what's making news this hour. City News meteorologist Jill Taylor says the worst of the expected freezing rain in the area will be around the Renfrew County. Ottawa and Smiths Falls may be spared the brunt of this, but are both still under that freezing rain warning. Now, Renfrew County officials have issued a significant weather event will impact travel and services throughout that municipality due to the freezing rain once again expected late this afternoon. Holiday plans on hold, waiting for word from both the province and federal government on the next COVID fighting measures. That may include travel restrictions from the federal government after the PM and premiers met virtually last night. The federal move could be announced today, along with word from the province. The premier, the health minister, and the top doctor have a media briefing that is scheduled to happen at 2 o'clock this afternoon. The price of gasoline in November was over 40% more than the same time last year. That helped drive up the inflation rate. In November, it cost you 4.7 more to live compared with November last year. StatsCan says added pressure on the inflation rate also came from higher prices for food and for furniture. City News Time, 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's time to score your political fix. And joining us this morning, Cam Holmstrom is a consultant with Blue Sky Strategy Group. Good morning, Cam.
Good morning, Rob.
Hey, welcome back. It's so good to hear from you.
Always glad to be here.
And we're joined this morning by Alex Creston, senior consultant at Crestview Strategy. Good morning, Alex.
Morning, Rob. Morning, Cam.
Yeah, it's great to hear from both of you. So, in a radio interview, the Prime Minister said, "Summer will be better." Summer will be better. Summer is always better in my books, but nevertheless, he was asked about COVID-19, the Omicron variant. Omicron has certainly taken over the news agenda. What's your sense of it, Cam? Has it taken over the political agenda as well?
I don't think you can avoid it taking over the political agenda. I think you're seeing what's happening with the numbers now, what the effect that Omicron is having of basically doubling numbers every 2-3 days. Politically, you can't ignore that. The problem is that politically, what can you do about it? And I think that's where a bigger problem is coming in right now, is that the best way to fight is to get people vaccinated faster. That's about as good as you can do at this point. It's already here, so you can't keep it out of the country. And I don't know how well you can get ahead of it. I think the problem for our political leaders at this point is that too many of them don't want to be seen to be moving too fast, to be panicking, as it were. The problem is when you have a disease like this that moves so fast, if you're not moving right away, you're already too late. So you're always playing catch up. So I don't know what exactly it'll look like. I don't know exactly how they'll respond, but it has to kind of take over the political agenda at this point. I don't know how you could ignore it and not seem totally out of touch with what's going on.
Yeah, maybe Alex, you could pick up on that point. I mean, if you're a sitting government, whether you're the Trudeau government, the Ford government, whatever municipal government, I mean, what can you really say? What can you really do right now for pandemic-weary Canadians who have been living this life for almost 2 years?
Yeah, I think that every government is in a tough situation here because we've got public demands for the government to do things that they're frankly not very good at doing. The government does have, very few levers that can actually make a meaningful difference in this situation. And the government is also not very good at telling people what they can and can't do in businesses, who they can and can't serve, and when they can and cannot be open. I think that there's a delicate balancing act here where the government politically can't be seen to be overreacting, but also can't be seen to be underreacting. Whatever they do, half of the population is going to say, well, they're either not doing enough or they're in danger of losing people as we continue to, ramp up and ramp down measures, there's only so many times the government can do this before people just get sick of it and stop following the rules.
Okay, so this week, it's already been a pretty big week. We had this Bank of Canada mandate thing on Monday, and then yesterday, the fiscal update. We had an inflation thing out this morning. The CPI was out this morning, which I want to talk about a little bit later. But politically speaking, the big day was yesterday with the fiscal update. A lot of continued spending in there for COVID-related measures. So with the fiscal update, Cam, do you think the government struck the right tone with that? I mean, it's not so much about building back better, but more, let's get through this first. What do you think, Cam?
Well, again, I don't know how you could have missed the tone on the fiscal update, because really, unless you were bringing in a lot of new measures right away, there was no way to really mess that one up, even for these guys. But I think that's the thing, is that
you're always so charitable to the Liberals, Cam. That's why I love you.
I try.
That's why I love you.
I try. I'm that kind of guy. But seriously, it's like the fact is that you could tell by that there's this uneasiness, right? Because you don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing with governments of, I don't think, it's weird. You think they'd be used to it at this point, because we've been in this now for almost 2 years, being in this constant state of flux and only looking so far ahead because you're not quite sure. Yet at the same time, we always keep getting caught like this. Even the amounts that were announced for COVID supports and the changes to COVID programs, are those going to have to be ramped up at some point if this really takes off and this really gets out of hand, right? Is there going to need to be more help to support the provinces on health care if the system gets overwhelmed? Like already Manitoba's asking for the Army to come in to help support their healthcare system, right? So it's like, as this rolls out, is what's been put in there, is that even going to be enough? So I think that's the eternal risk for this. And I find it interesting. To me, the fiscal update really didn't tell me anything that I wasn't already going to know.
Right.
But it didn't say a lot of maybe what I would have expected in so much as, you know what, we have flexibility. Here's the buffer in case things really get worse again, right? That isn't there. So that leaves me wondering, okay, then what are you going to do to create that when that time comes, if it comes?
Okay. What do you think on the fiscal update, just given the way Omicron has kind of seized the agenda here over the last 2 weeks? Alex, what did you think about the message that comes out of the fiscal update?
Yeah, I think that people are going to expect the government to continue to spend, especially in areas where they're making a direct impact on the ability for the economy to recover. I think that we're in a situation of government spending that is not going to stop anytime soon.
Right.
And it kind of feels like we're at the Christmas time running up the credit card. But this is why in good times governments shouldn't be spending money, and that's the lesson that really should be learned here, is that the Liberals ran up massive budget deficits when they didn't need to, and here we are on a rainy day without an umbrella.
Okay. Let's fast forward, because there are things I want to talk about in the second half, like the lack of a deal between Ontario and the federal government on childcare, Bill 21, which is a hot issue here in West Quebec. The $40 billion to compensate First Nations children and families for the child welfare system. I want to get into all of those, but we'll save those for after the break and start with this kind of developing news story for today, which is the Consumer Price Index. It's out. It's a big number. It's 4.7%. Food prices way up again year over year. Gas prices up. I mean, all 8 components of the CPI up. And StatsCan goes out of its way to even note in its daily report that for the inflation rate, we're losing purchasing power. It says that wages have not kept up with the rising cost of living. I'm wondering how at risk, Cam, you think the Liberals are at appearing out of touch on these retail pocketbook issues. Does it come across as they're taking it seriously right now?
Yes and no. And
yes
honestly,
and no.
honestly, I have the same criticism for both the Liberals and the Conservatives on this,
all right,
to be very honest, is that the fact is they're both acknowledging there's a problem. Because there is a problem, right? Like, I just finished doing my grocery order through the superstore to pick up tomorrow, and some of the prices for things for our Christmas dinner and whatnot are through the roof, right?
Yeah.
You're feeling that every day when you're doing this. You can't ignore what's right in front of you. But it's like, what are you actually going to do about it? I think that's part of the problem. The problem for the government is that a lot of this inflation has been created by factors that are totally out of their hands, right? Whether it be supply chain issues, whether it be even just the effect of COVID, right? Like, talking year over year, the effect of the consumer price index. The price of gasoline this time last year was far lower than it had been for a while because of the effects that COVID had on the oil markets, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you have that shock all of a sudden being reabsorbed again. And the government can't do anything about that. But at the same time, what they're putting in the window to say this is going to help, it's not answering the question. Like, either they're talking about, okay, we'll bring in $10 a day childcare. No, that's great. But as someone who has a child who's 9 years old, who I don't need childcare for, and I won't in the maybe 4 or 5 years, if Ontario ever gets an agreement that we actually comes, it does nothing to help me today deal with the cost. They're talking about bringing in.
Well, it's not going to help anybody today anyway, because this is well, Kathleen Wynne would call it a stretch goal, right? It's 5 years from now. It's 5 years from now.
But even in the rest of the country, right? They're not going to help them today. And same thing with housing, right? The price of housing has driven the index up that much.
New record just reported today by the Real Estate Board. New record high for housing in Canada.
Exactly. And the federal government's plans and what they're offering to help bring in housing supply, sure, that'll help down the road, but that's not helping today. Whereas I look at the Conservatives, they're saying, yes, there's inflation, but they're pointing to the government's fiscal policy as the problem, which it's not, right? So if you're not being serious about the problem, how can I trust you to bring me the solution? I think that's the big problem, is that everyone right now is saying, oh, yeah, there's a problem, but no one's actually pointing to any real tangible solution to actually bring this under control, to actually bring people that you're talking about, that gap between our wages and the cost of living. Neither of them is actually proposing anything to bring that back into balance. And that's a problem. That's dangerous for both of them, because it's one thing to say, hey, I feel your pain, I know the problem. But if you have no serious answer to answer the question, then you're just not a serious consideration in my mind.
Okay. On the Liberals, do they look out of touch on pocketbook issues? Does it appear as though they have their finger on the matter? What's your take on it, Alex? Cost of living.
Yeah, I think this is a case, again, of a government that hasn't taken fiscal policy seriously. Like we saw this in the election when Justin Trudeau said that this wasn't something that was top of his agenda.
He doesn't think about monetary policy. He thinks about families.
He doesn't think about monetary policy. And you know what? Most families probably said, well, yeah, I don't think about monetary policy either. But you don't think about it until it becomes a problem. It's sort of like your leaky roof. You don't fix that roof until there's water in the kitchen. The people are starting to feel it. They're going to see massive increases in the price of everything. And, economists have been warning about this for a decade. People have been saying, look, we can't keep spending money like this. Guys like Pierre Poilievre have been saying we can't keep spending money like this because at some point a small increase in the inflationary rate will be a huge impact on our ability to continue to, live the standard of life that we've had. And ultimately, that's all Canadians care about.
All right. Well, just let me jump in there and ask Alex, how effective is Poilievre in his role right now as the
I think that this is
critic?
Something that this gives him an opportunity to kind of say, I told you so. Because this has been something that he's harped on for a long time. But you know what? Because he's harped on it for a long time, he's talked about it in with charts and graphs and numbers and in a lot of ways that the average Canadian sort of glosses over their eyes at. Now the average Canadian understands it because the cost of their weekly grocery bill and everything else
Go ahead, Cam. Jump in there. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, the problem is that Pierre's wrong. And that's the thing, is that everyone's feeling inflation right now. The Americans are well over 6%. The OECD average is 4.6, so we're 0.1% over the average of all developed nations. So it's not like we're alone in this, and that Justin Trudeau created.
Pierre said Pierre has come back to that. Well, we're all stupid. We don't have a monopoly on stupid. So,
no, but I think that is the case, right?
But my point is that Poilievre is hurting himself and hurting the Conservatives and saying, like, look, he created this problem. He didn't. You can't say he's a terrible prime minister on one hand, and on the other hand, try to suggest he's created inflation globally as if we're able to do that. The fact is that the federal government spending policy has had nothing to do with where we're at. And people, as much as the former Bank of Canada governor have said this, and whenever someone like Stephen Polo steps up and says, look, I have background education on this, here's what's happening, Poilievre calls him a liberal shill or quote-unquote expert and throws culture war crap at him. Like, I'm sorry. You know what? Pierre and I have as much background in this as we're both the same age. We both have about the same education and both the same professional experience. And you know what? I would never dare to go to...
You're not going to become the next governor of the Bank of Canada, Cam? Is that what you're saying?
Hey, no,
I think on this...
I'd vote for you.
You can't say that there's no impact on inflation when governments and I would not restrict this just to Justin Trudeau and the government of Canada, but governments around the world continuing to borrow and print money.
Okay, when we come back, let me stop here. Okay, a lot of stuff in the mix today. I really want to let's pick up on Bill 21 when we come back. It's a hot issue here in the local area. There's a big protest yesterday in Chelsea. Okay, about Bill 21. The Chelsea school teacher. That's next. It's your political fix. Rob Snow Show, City News.
Here at the Thirsty Maiden, we offer a variety of products. So everything from breakfast items, so it's breakfast sandwiches and scones, which have become a staple item here at the cafe. We have an assortment of pastries and cakes and desserts. So we're really big on our dessert bar, which a lot of people come here for. And of course, our delicious coffee beverages. So we do offer not your typical lattes, things like a chocolate banana coconut latte, cinnamon coconut, which is my favorite, and our take on even a pumpkin spice, which we add nutmeg and a dash of cayenne in just to give it a bit of a kick. When you start a business, you don't factor in all the things that could go wrong. You think anything that goes wrong, any failure, it's got to be something on your shoulders. You didn't market right, you're carrying the wrong products, you didn't price your items correctly, all the things, right? But when this pandemic began, things going through my brain were I didn't factor in a pandemic. And we were just starting to grow. We were about to blow up, and I think I spent 2 days crying. And then I shut my business down for, I think, a period of 2 or 3 days. And just being at home during that time, I realized this is not me. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a hard worker. I don't give up, and I'm a go-getter. And I started to think, well, I should probably just start clearing out my freezers and posting and seeing who wants to buy what. And that was sort of how I built my momentum back up. I realized that there's still a large number of people that wanted to support us and were looking for the items that I had to provide. So we started there. Then I reopened literally not even 3 or 4 days after I'd closed my doors, and then started doing curbside pickups and deliveries, started doing the deliveries myself, free deliveries to the local community, going as far as Bell's Corners and Carp as well. And that's why we're still here. This community has really kept us going a year into the pandemic. But we've had a changeover of staff a couple times now, and situations change, and when you can't offer hours for your employees, you don't blame them when they have to go elsewhere. So I think that's also been one of the challenges is recruiting, training, and then they leave, and then bringing in more people and recruiting, and anybody in this industry will tell you that that's something we deal with on a regular basis, whether or not COVID's in the mix or not, but more so now because every time there's a lockdown, there's a risk of, will we make it through? And then you lay off more staff, and then again, their situations and their circumstances change.
radio show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Returns with Cam Holmstrom, Blue Sky Strategy Group, Alex Creston, Crestview Strategy. Bill 21. It's been a hot issue here in the local area because of the story of the Chelsea school teacher reassigned because she wears a hijab. The three Federalist leaders have been shamefully MIA on Bill 21. What's the political calculation there, Cam?
Well,
why the silence?
Well, the political calculation always was not wanting to lose out in Quebec. Let's be real about it. Let's just be absolutely blunt about it. Okay. But Jagmeet Singh finally came out yesterday and went on a different path. But I'm sorry, like that to me, even as a New Democrat, that to me wasn't good enough because, like, look, this is way too late. And I get the risk that would have come by having gone up against François Legault, who's extremely popular, and this bill that, frankly, is extremely popular in a lot of parts of Quebec. But sometimes you have to do the right thing because it's the right thing, and to heck with the cost of it politically. And to me, what blows my mind about this story, it's been the hue and cry from political leaders in Ottawa of, oh my Lord, I cannot believe this thing happened that we knew would happen. You know, It's like, oh, I never could have foreseen this thing happening, which we knew would happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, where have you been? Right.
Exactly. Yeah. It's absurd. And now that you're in the security of being outside of an election, not trying to face the electorate for 2 or 3 years, now you feel that you have the courage to come out and say, oh, that is wrong. That is so wrong. Like, give me a break.
Yeah.
Like,
do you agree, Alex? Do you agree, Alex?
No. This is shameful on all parts. I think particularly on the Liberals that have made such a case over a generation that the one thing that unites all Canadians that we can all identify with and be proud of is our commitment to diversity and inclusion and welcoming new people to Canada. Yeah. And here we are bending over backwards, to avoid criticizing a clearly bigoted law for the sake of political expediency.
Amen.
It's normal for politicians to tell one story in Quebec and another story in Canada and the rest of Canada, but that just doesn't play with something like this. I had to explain this to my son that his teacher wouldn't be able to work in Quebec. That baffled him, couldn't understand it.
Really?
But somehow, grown adults who are supposed to be running this country are willing to
let me ask
let go
both
of all
this.
our values and culture.
Let me ask both of you this. If it was a political calculation, okay, we don't want to lose support in Quebec, we don't want to inflame Legault or whatever because of the popularity of this bill among the majority, how is that calculation paid off? How is that gamble paid off? The New Democrats have 1 seat in Quebec? One? Do you think, Cam, for example, if Mr. Singh had levered opposition to Bill 21, maybe it would have played better in other parts of Canada?
Well, to be fair, let's look what happened in that leaders' debate with the one federal leader who did speak out against it, right? And what happened to the moderator who asked the question about it. Mm-hmm. They both got excoriated, right? Mm-hmm. So they paid a heavy price for it, and none of the other leaders wanted to step into that bear trap. And I'm not going to say it was right, it wasn't, but that was the price. But I would point this out throughout our history, because to me this is deeply personal, because what this bill is all about, it's about assimilating people. It's about it's not about, yes, it's banning about symbols and whatnot, but it's about being what, as I saw on the line, Jamie Carroll and Kim Bosenkool had a good piece on this, talking about making people what's the quote-unquote right kind of Quebecer, right? Yeah. That's assimilation. And you know what? We had a policy like that in this country called the residential schools. And you know what? It also passed by majority vote. And guess what? It was wrong. It was wrong then. It was wrong now. And we're repeating history here in this. And that's why, to me, this idea of using, it has majority support, like the Bloc, like Susan House. It has the support of the majority of Quebecers. It has a majority of MNAs as a way as a defense about putting down minority rights. That's why you don't put minority rights.
Right. That's why you have minority rights. This is why we have minority rights. This is why we have minority rights. gosh.
It's not even just
you know what? Let's adjourn, and the three of us will go run the country. How about that? Okay. All right. I'm sure you agree, Alex. I'm sure you agree. I mean, to me, the Tories are no better. I mean, they've made this political calculation that it's about separation of powers, and it's
the Tories should see this as an issue that could energize their base as well. They didn't do that well with the New Canadians in the last election. No,
exactly.
Also, this is an issue of individual liberty and religious freedom. This should be right in the Conservative wheelhouse.
Okay, we have about 2 minutes left, Cam, and I wanted to ask you about this specifically because of your Métis heritage. But the $40 billion, that's going to be an eye-popping number for a lot of people. But it's to compensate First Nations children and families for the failures of Canada's child welfare system, and the government says to fund long-term reform. They want to keep this out of the court, okay? What's your reaction to this news? What do you think of how this is played out with Murray Sinclair kind of acting as a mediator, I guess, here?
Well, this is when I heard that Murray Sinclair had agreed to help mediate this, that made me feel better. Okay. Because he has a record of going about things the right way and getting things done. Now, I'm going to wait to see if an actual settlement that comes. The government's put aside money, that's great. But you know what? To me, it's like budgeting, right? Just because you budgeted for it doesn't mean you're going to spend it, and that's what I want to see what comes of this.
Okay.
And even that, it's a 20-20 split. $20 billion for compensation, $20 billion to get a new system for First Nations and 18 new people up and running. And especially that second $20 billion, that sounds about right. When you start talking about the costs that it takes to run a proper child welfare system, especially in remote areas. That adds up to me. So that makes sense. So I'm hopeful, but you know what? I'm not trying to get too far ahead of myself because heck, we've just seen these children, now adults, having to be in the courts for so long, having to fight for this, right? So I'm not taking anything for granted. Like, I'm glad to see it actually on paper that, okay, we're now setting aside the money to do it. That's a step, but it's a relatively small step. The big step will be when it's actually an agreement signed in paper. Then the next step will actually be the execution of that.
Yeah. It's a lot better than a trip to Tofino. Thank you to both of you for this week. Great stuff. Great stuff. We'll talk soon.
All right. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, bye-bye. Cam Holmstrom, consultant, Blue Sky Strategy Group. Alex Creston is a senior consultant at Crestview Strategy. And the Talkback Hour is next at 750-1310. The Rob Snow Show on City News.
one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, December 15th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now under a freezing rain warning, it's -4 in Ottawa, -2 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Renfrew County is warning of a significant weather event that will impact travel and services. Freezing rain warnings are up across eastern Ontario. City News meteorologist Jill Taylor says in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, we could avoid the freezing rain portion of this system, which will start as snow. It may stay cooler longer in Renfrew County, leading to freezing rain, ice pellets, and then snow, all possible from this afternoon or late morning into this evening. Now with the forecast, here's Jill.
We're okay through the morning. It's the afternoon. Heads up for some freezing rain late afternoon. Could see 2 to 3 centimeters of snow and ice pellets, some ice accretion as well. Greatest chance of that freezing rain for areas near the Quebec border. The high today +1. Rising temperatures overnight with periods of light rain. For today, the high late this evening, +1.
And right now in Ottawa, -4 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's -2. Ontario Premier Doug Ford expected to make an announcement about COVID-19 booster doses today as a daily case count in Ontario is now 1,808. Our Richard Southern says the Premier appears ready to act.
What is not yet clear, though, is if we're going to see any new public health measures. Here's what we do know. Premier Ford, along with the Health Minister, the Solicitor General, and the Chief Medical Officer of Health, will hold an announcement at 2 o'clock this afternoon. We know the subject is going to be expanding booster shots. Right now, those 18 and over have to wait until January 4th to get their booster. Perhaps that will get moved up. We'll have to see. Prior to this announcement, though, sources tell me Premier Ford will be meeting with his cabinet at 11 o'clock this morning, a meeting that's been moved up from where it was previously scheduled. Dr. Moore indicated yesterday that he has made new public health recommendations to the Premier for the cabinet to discuss today. And sources tell me these recommendations are everything from reinstating capacity limits on retail to perhaps stopping the sale of food and beverage at sports arenas. None of this is 100% yet. Again, it's just measures that are up for discussion. It's not clear what the cabinet may settle on. If they do settle on anything, though, Dr. Moore said yesterday it's going to be a province-wide approach. Whatever they do is going to be province-wide, not targeted on a regional basis. Richard Southern, City News.
City News time 10:03. We are also expecting an announcement from the federal government on travel.
Omicron is expected to take over as the dominant variant very soon. And now, days away from the holidays, the federal government is expected to revive its advisory when it comes to non-essential international travel. An advisory that was only lifted back in October after being in place since the start of the pandemic in this country. That announcement could come as early as today, discussed during a call with the Prime Minister and Premiers last night. The Health Minister has already warned that travel outside of the country is a big red flag right now.
If they think of traveling, that should be a serious alarm bell, a serious concern for them.
Coming back to Canada could be getting even more complicated with more tough travel talk on that call last night, including a 14-day quarantine, even for fully vaccinated Canadians, and a possible ban on all non-essential foreign travelers, including Americans. Jamie Pulfer, City News.
City News time at 10:04. The inflation rate, 4.7% in November. StatsCan reports last month's rate matched October's increase, and that was the largest year-over-year gain for the Consumer Price Index since February of 2003. While food prices rose 4.7% in November, it was gasoline jumping 43.6% that fueled that annual inflation increase. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on The Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
More public health measures are already being imposed in some places. And we know that more will be announced today because of the Omicron variant of COVID-19. Are these the right moves for government to be making now? Do you agree with them? 750-1310. 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Should governments be doing more, impose more stringent restrictions? As you heard from our correspondent in Toronto, Richard Southern, things under consideration. Local travel restrictions, capacity limits at some businesses like retailers. Back to the bad old days, like things like, 25% capacity, 15% capacity, non-essential retail. How about this? No more sold-out NHL hockey games. Maybe start there. Or forget about all of it, and it's nothing but a bunch of overblown hype. Hey, I hear that. I hear that all the time. I don't necessarily agree with it. But some people think politicians and health officials are overreacting. They're overreacting. What is your opinion? 750-1310. 750-1310, 613-750-1310. I mean, some of what is under discussion is already out there for public consumption already. Other details, other measures might be announced later this week. But I would say, make no mistake, there are going to be restrictions because of Omicron. And the way the Prime Minister is talking, he did a radio interview in Toronto, and sounds like winter's already a write-off. And all we can do is kind of look forward to summer. I always look forward to summer when it's winter, but not in the COVID context. Look, none of this is the news that I wanted to be talking about with you today, this week, at this point in time, in the middle of December of 2021. I did not think, even as recently as just a few weeks ago, that this is where we would be right now. I really didn't. When it came to COVID-19, I thought, or maybe I was just being hopeful, or maybe I was dreaming in Technicolor. I thought we were in the end stages of this. The childhood vaccination program ramping up, giving booster shots to the vulnerable, and everyone could enjoy a nice Christmas holiday. And instead, the news media is filled with stories of an entirely different sort. I mean, it sounds like, border restrictions are going to come into effect again. There's great uncertainty about what's going to happen with schools in the new year. All kinds of rumors about students being told, clear out your locker, take everything home. The top doctor here in Ontario, it seems to me what he's saying is this kind of regional approach to containment, if that's what you call it, containment, I guess, trying to contain the spread of the Omicron variant. A regional approach is not his preference. Whatever restrictions may be coming, he wants them to be province-wide. Some regions of Ontario have already put in place restrictions, like Kingston, for example, and some of the other provinces are moving to impose restrictions of their own. So what do you think about where we are, where we're going? More public health measures are already being imposed in some places, and more will be announced today. And there's a Doug Ford news conference at 2 o'clock this afternoon. What is your opinion? Okay, the right things for the government to be doing right now, you agree with them? Should they be going further? Capacity limits, local travel restrictions? Or is it nothing but a bunch of overblown hype and people are overreacting? I'd like to know your opinion. Brian in Nepean. Good morning, Brian. You're on City News.
Hey, Rob.
What is your opinion, Brian?
Justin Trudeau came with the promise of making only science-based decisions.
Yep.
And this decision basically has been proven over the 2 years we've been living it to be a politically based decision.
Okay.
We've got our shots. We've done all our social distancing. We've followed all the rules. And has it made any difference? The word is almost none. So, unless we, as a nation of sheep instead of lions, we're going to end up like Australia and New Zealand if we're not careful, where we're getting fines for being out in our backyard. I mean, this is ridiculous. Get your damn shots, okay, and start living your life. Because, if you look at what Trudeau's done, Canada is no better than Mexico, according to the U.S. CDC, as far as COVID goes.
Okay.
Mexico has no restrictions.
Okay, I don't have any Mexican data in front of me, so
You just go to the CDC site and look at red,
right. Okay.
orange.
Right.
green.
Okay. So let's get to the kind of actionable question for this morning. More restrictions are coming, Brian.
And they're not going to make any difference.
Not going to make any difference. Okay.
None.
All right.
None of the rest of them.
So you don't think it's the right thing to do, right?
No, it's
Gotcha. Terrible. Okay. Thank you, Brian. Thank you. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310 in Perth. Adrian. Good morning, Adrian. You're on City News, Adrian.
How's it going, Rob?
It goes, sir. It goes, and it goes, and it goes, and it never seems to end, Adrian.
That's true.
Right? Okay.
But I got a question for you.
Question? Okay, I'm better at asking questions than answering them, but I'll give it my best shot.
We'll see what you can do here.
All right.
Until we get a vaccine that actually prevents you from getting COVID,
right?
How are the cases ever going to stop coming? Because I'm vaccinated, I can still get COVID.
Yeah.
So the cases are still going to go up.
Yeah.
So
well, we had we had 1,800 cases in Ontario today, sir. 1,800 cases.
But the cases are irrelevant because we can still get it whether we're vaccinated or not.
Yeah, people are saying this, but again, I come back to what I said last week on the radio about this. You can still get it, but are you going to get it to the same degree? Is it going to put you in the hospital? Are you going to die from it? What does the data tell us on that?
But they're making decisions based on the cases, right?
Well, I don't know if they're making decisions based on cases, but I think cases. Adrian, I agree with you that I think cases don't tell the whole story.
No, they
cases don't tell the whole story.
And it would be really
yesterday, I haven't seen the number. I haven't.
The virus.
I'm sorry, Adrian. I haven't looked up the number for from Ottawa Public Health today, but I did look it up yesterday. Yeah, in Ottawa, there were 6 people in the hospital with COVID.
Right.
In Ottawa, right? Which seems to be detached from the big case count, right?
Eventually, people are going to start to push back. At least I hope they do.
That is my fear. That's my fear. Yeah, I don't want to see. You see, in some countries, Western democratic, in the liberal democratic tradition countries, thousands of people taking to the streets, tens of thousands of people taking to the streets. They've had enough.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, a lot. I don't like to see such.
We do our due diligence.
Breakdown of cohesion. Right. Yeah.
A good vaccine yet.
So, down.
And the only people profiting are the rich people and Pfizer.
Well, yeah,
well,
I'm not going to go near that, I guess. But anyway, what I want to get at is whether you like it or whether I like it. I'm sick of the whole thing. I'm sick of doing COVID radio shows. I've been doing them for 2 years, Adrian. You're probably sick of hearing me talk about it, right? Yeah, oh, geez,
right.
There's Rob Snow doing another COVID-19 radio show.
Let's find some other news.
Yeah, let's find some other news. I'm right there with you, right? But nevertheless, when there's news, I have to report it. The news today is going to be there's more restrictions, like travel restrictions. Dr. Moore is going to be asked about regional restrictions versus province-wide. What do you think about more restrictions coming?
I just don't understand how it's going to help the situation.
You don't think it's going to help? Gotcha, buddy. Thank you. Thank you, Adrian. Okay, there we go. One line available. Jennifer, Carl, Mo, take your call. One line for you as well. City News, Talkback Hour, Rob Snow Show, hottest hour talk radio in town. You can be part of it on the City News.
continues.
More public health measures are being imposed in some places, in some regions of Ontario, and some provinces. More will be announced today. We expect measures, at least from the Trudeau government. Doug Ford is certainly going to be asked about his preference during a 2 o'clock news conference. Are these the right moves for government to be making right now? What is your opinion? Jennifer in Ottawa. Good morning. Jennifer, you're on City News. What's your opinion?
Good morning. I tell you, after hearing a few of the last calls, I'm kind of taken aback. I really feel like they're doing the right thing and that imposing more restrictions will most certainly give us more freedom in the future. I have 2 children in school.
Okay.
They spent 2 years online learning. In the past 2 years, we've also moved across the country, so I've experienced COVID in 2 separate provinces. And we definitely feel more safe in Ontario. And, you know, we have to protect the more vulnerable. I'm on my way to see my dad who's in palliative care right now. I want to be able to see him. I cannot see him if everybody is running around all willy-nilly and spreading COVID. You know, until we can get a handle on it and get everybody vaccinated, and we're not quite there yet percentage-wise for the population in order to eradicate this disease, we need to do what we need to do. And it sucks. But you know what? Other generations have lived through worse things. We're lucky to be here.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Jennifer. There's a counter opinion from the first 2 calls. This is from the Globe and Mail on what is anticipated this morning or at some point today from the Prime Minister and his people. Quote, the federal government is readying new travel rules. Could be announced as early as Wednesday, today, after Justin Trudeau met with the premiers to chart a response to the escalation of COVID-19 cases, increasingly driven by the Omicron variant. Prime Minister had a call with his provincial and territorial counterparts to brief them on options the federal government is weighing to make travel more difficult. The government excels at making your travel difficult. They excel at that. Chief among the travel changes the federal government wants to make is the revival of the advisory against non-essential international travel. That advisory was only lifted in October. The government is also considering a ban on foreign nationals entering Canada for non-essential travel. A similar ban already prevents foreign nationals from 10 African countries from entering Canada. It's been widely criticized, but the government defends it. The tougher travel rules could cause massive disruptions just 1 week before Christmas, and as airports have been readying for the busiest travel month since the start of the pandemic. So that's what we are in anticipation of from Mr. Trudeau and company. Mo in Canada. Mo, good to hear from you this morning. You're on City News. What's your opinion on the idea of having more restrictions imposed, Mo?
I think we needed that.
You need it. Okay. All right.
I agree with what the last caller she said, Jennifer. I agree. We know what the society on last 100 years gone through eradication of certain diseases. It takes a time. It's not a flipping a switch. So if there are more restrictions, it's greater good. Like, I mean, you and I can have go to see a football game, a hockey game another year from now. That's perfect.
Okay.
I hope.
What about what do you think about the idea of, say, going to see a hockey game this weekend with 15,000 other people? Should that still be?
I think that's since we find out that the numbers are going up. I think that's a terrible idea.
Terrible idea. Okay, Mo. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mo. Thank you. Yep.
Have a good day, Rob.
You too,
Thanks
Mo. Thank you. Just a reminder on the case counts today: 1,808 new COVID cases. 153 people are in ICU. Across Ontario. The number for the Ottawa Public Health Region is 117, 6 in Renfrew. Bruce McIntyre will join us in about an hour from the Eganville Leader. We'll talk about what's happening in Renfrew County. Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 18, Eastern Ontario Health Unit, Cornwall, Hawkesbury, 10. 9 deaths in the province. Test positivity rate 6%. Lots of tests, though. 44,700 tests. So again, what we're talking about is the reimposition, if you will, of restrictions. Right move for the government to be doing right now. You agree with this? It's happening. It's happening. Should governments be doing more? Maybe more stringent restrictions, local travel restrictions. Hey, you live here, but your family lives there. You live in Ottawa, you have family you want to go see in Toronto, don't go to Toronto for Christmas. Capacity limits at businesses, we had those. Should we bring them back? What about, sold out Raptors games or Toronto Maple Leafs games? The Senators don't sell out, but, they're getting 12,000 a game or something. Or are health officials and politicians overreacting? What's your opinion? Phil is in Ottawa. Good morning, Phil. You're on City News.
Good morning, sir. Like you, I'm done with it. I'm at my wit's end talking about it, and it's because we're circling the wagons again. We're doing the same thing over and over. We listen to the policies of the government, and we listen to our government talk both sides of their mouth when they talk about how they're going to get strict with China. And I know I'm going off into a tangent, Mr. Snow, but just let me just get this point out. I believe that they don't want to send diplomats to China, not as a means of...
I'm not on that today. We can get into that some other day, but that's not where I'm going. Darlene in Nepean. Good morning, Darlene. Rob. Hi, you're on City News, Darlene. More restrictions are on the way. Is that a good idea? What do you think? Should we be doing more, or is it all just an overreaction?
We should be doing more.
Doing more, okay.
And having them enforced. What about all the fines? What about its rules? It's not suggestions. We're not, talking about something minor here. People are concerned about their Christmas plans being ruined.
Yes.
How about your life? We've had 0 to weak leadership.
Okay.
Especially with, we've had weak leadership at all levels, except perhaps at the city. And fines have not been enforced here. And it just makes my heart break. This is something that is new. It's a friggin' pandemic. It doesn't stop. Illegals. What about Roxham Road?
Yeah, I don't want to get into Roxham Road.
No, I'm just saying, you asked about restrictions.
Yeah.
Every place, travel restrictions.
Well, I mean, if they're going to reimpose a ban on non-essential international travel on fully vaccinated Canadians, people carrying Canadian passports, I understand your frustration in what's happening at Roxham Road. I appreciate that.
And other places.
I really do.
And, I'm thinking of my mother because it's Christmas.
Sure.
And when she was a little girl, her whole family, like her mother, had TB. They were in Quebec on a farm, rather poor farm, and they didn't know what to do with my mother and her sister, so they let them play with their mother in her bed. And my mother remembers her peeling oranges for them. God must certainly have been looking after my mom and her sister, because they did not catch TB, but they were with their mother when they died. For God's sakes, I don't know what has to happen for people to wake up. No,
wake up. All right.
Christmas.
Okay, darling. Thank you, darling. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think the big message that's going to be at the end of this news day is the federal government does not want you to travel. Okay? It has not wanted you to travel internationally for quite some time. It seems to be on a mission to make your traveling adventures as miserable as possible. And if you don't want to end up in one of the federal government's awful quarantine hotels, and you had plans to travel outside the country for the holidays, gosh, it looks like you're going to have to cancel your plans, because you're going to have to quarantine for 14 days upon your return, no matter your vaccination status. That's what's on the way, likely to be announced by the Trudeau government this afternoon. We'll pick it up right after the news. It's halftime Restrictions are on the way. So is the news. Restriction-free. This is City News.
Experience some. .101 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, December 15th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 3 degrees. It's minus 2 in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news this hour. We're expecting a wintry mix today. It will start with snow and change over to rain as temperatures this evening rise above freezing. There is a chance, though, of freezing rain in that mix. That is more likely up the valley. Renfrew has said it's expecting a significant weather event that will impact travel. That's expected to arrive late this afternoon. So that did prompt all school buses in Renfrew to be canceled this morning in anticipation of the trickier conditions for the drive home. Highway 17 remains closed between Beeline Road and Round Lake Road. Local detours in place. A collision this morning involved a couple of cars and a tractor trailer. 3 people taken to hospital, 1 suffering serious injuries. Both the driver and passenger in the rig were not injured. Case count of COVID in Ontario continues a steady climb today. 1,808 new cases, along with 9 additional deaths. Ottawa has 117 of these new cases, 18 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 10 in Eastern Ontario, and 6 new cases in Renfrew. 6% of the 44,700 tests that were done came back positive. At 2 this afternoon, a gaggle of provincial politicians and health experts will hold a media briefing. Richard Southern says this will concern measures to stem the growing tide of COVID cases. It could range from things like not selling food and drink at sporting events to expanding the age for those eligible for a COVID vaccine booster. As concern grows among medical professionals about this COVID surge, the federal government also expected to make an announcement today on traveling. It follows a meeting held last night between the Prime Minister and the leaders of the provinces and territories. City News Time at 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
So just a couple of housekeeping items. I mean, with all the Omicron news, COVID-19 news, it's sort of a developing story. There are developments, and there will be throughout the day. That's why you want to keep it here. We have a memo from Ottawa Public Health. It was sent to us just around 10 o'clock. Dear Chair Eglai, Keith Eglai, he's chair of the Board of Health, Mayor Watson, members of council. This is from Dr. Vera Etches and Marie-Claude Turcotte, Commander, Ottawa Public Health Command Center. I love that, the Command Center. Command Center. The city's Emergency Operations Center has been re-escalated to the activated level, and Ottawa Public Health and the city are working hand in hand to drive mass COVID-19 immunization efforts. Earlier this week, we asked Ottawa Public Health employees across the organization to pause their routine work to support the COVID-19 immunization efforts starting immediately. We have also reached out to local physicians and other alternative providers to increase the number of available immunizers. Ottawa Public Health is in the process of modifying the existing immunization strategy to offer doses to as many people as possible as soon as possible. Ottawa Public Health will provide additional information regarding the changes to the immunization strategy in the following days once details are confirmed. So, say for example, you had a public health nurse who worked on a program like Healthy Babies, Healthy Moms at Ottawa Public Health, or at the Sexual Health Clinic for Ottawa Public Health. They're being pulled away from that routine work, and they will be working instead on the immunization effort starting immediately. And you may remember we had Steve Clark is the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. We had him on the program. When was that? About 2 weeks ago, I guess, David, right? Because they were having a housing affordability summit. The Ford government was going to have a housing affordability summit with all the big city mayors. That was supposed to be tomorrow. It's not going to be tomorrow. It's going to be tentatively. It's been rescheduled for January 19th. That is according to Charlie Pinkerton, who's been on this program before. He's a great reporter with iPolitics. So just a few housekeeping items. 10:35, Rob Snow Show, Talkback Hour, 750-1310. Public health measures are being imposed in some places. Some are going to be announced for Canada today. And Doug Ford is having a news conference this afternoon, and along with Dr. Moore. And Doug Ford is going to be asked, what are you going to do in Ontario about Omicron? You had 1,800 cases today. And Doug Ford is going to say, I'll tell you later. I'm not ready to tell you now. My question is, are these the right moves for a government to be making right now? Should governments be doing more? Capacity limits at businesses, travel restrictions. What's going on with these sold-out NHL hockey games? Or is it all just a bunch of overblown hype and politicians and health officials are overreacting? What do you think? Sam in Canada, you're on City News. Sam, good morning.
Good morning, Rob. Hi. I'm just as fed up as everybody else of the situation. I just moved back into my office a few weeks ago. Now I have to, consider moving out again. But I think it's important to learn the lessons of history. We all forget about that tainted blood scandal from a long time ago. And Mr. Justice Horace Creever enunciated a principle there that I think is very important for today. In matters of public health, you exercise what's called the precautionary principle. You don't wait for evidence that something is bad before acting, if there's a theory there. You wait for evidence that something is good. And just to put it back in context, you may recall that there were issues about deferring gay people and Haitians because they were potentially at higher risk, but there was no clear evidence of that. And there was on hepatitis C, there were issues of, not doing surrogate testing for what was then called non-A, non-B hepatitis. They didn't even know that there was a hepatitis C yet, but there were delays in doing surrogate testing because there was no evidence that would do any good. And in the end, it turned out that all those issues would have done good and prevented a lot of harm. And that was a huge public health fiasco. So if you look at the precautionary principle that Mr. Justice Horace Creever talked about back then, we need to apply that here today.
Okay.
We need to apply these principles now and wait for evidence that Omicron isn't that bad. And if we get that, great, then we can lift the restrictions. But I think if you look at history, we've got to implement the precautionary principle and take whatever measures are necessary to safeguard the public.
Okay, very interesting way to look at it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sam. Up next, in Kempville, John. Good morning. John, you're on City News.
Good morning, Rob. Thank you for the last caller. Boy, does he ever nail it right between the eyes. But probably a little bit too sophisticated for the average person to really understand.
Okay.
The points are excellent. And So my take on this is a much simpler, to take a simpler view of it.
Okay.
What we really need is courage, consistency, and compliance, and apply those principles that Sam alluded to. I think they were very well expressed. So what we need is our politicians to get together to get a consistent approach across the country, or at least across the province. But the problem is we have these multi-jurisdictional issues, right? With federal,
sure,
municipal, regional, whatever.
Yeah.
Omicron doesn't care. Omicron is not interested in our political. Is managed to shut down the radical right element, and I'm not talking politically. I'm really talking about people that are dysfunctional thinkers. I'm on Randy Hillier's mailing list just for my own entertainment.
Okay, all right.
And it
Captain Suspenders, yeah. What's Captain Suspenders all up to now?
He's going to Ryerson, I think next week, Ryerson at Polytechnical in Toronto, with his friend Maxime Bernier, to have a great big, ignite the right crazy lunatic fringe to fight against public health. My last point, Rob, would be, if we were to look at this as a military operation, which there are some similarities to it, would you let politicians call the shots? Would you let the Prime Minister, who is a drama teacher, and Doug Ford, who is a former printing guy, family business, be making these decisions? No, you would not. Lincoln appointed his generals in the Civil War to run the war.
Okay. So who should run the war?
I think we should be appointing medical and military experts to a tribunal and give them ultimate authority. Make the decision.
I don't know about that. Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm not ready to cancel the elections.
Oh, no, I'm not saying cancel the election. This
right.
is a special case, right?
Yeah, okay. How many task forces do we have, John, right now? How many task forces do we have right now? If we were to add them all up.
But are we listening to them?
I guess that's another question. Are we following their advice? They say well, they always defer. Well, I'm deferring to the health officials.
Exactly. So what we need is to then, it would be, if I was a politician, if I was Prime Minister, I would actually welcome to be able to transfer that decision-making authority to an expert tribunal, however many people we think it might be, because that takes the political heat off of me. Because then I can say, actually, it was the tribunal's decision, and look at their expertise, their PhDs, their epidemiologists, their military, their supply chain managers. Let them be the expert.
Okay, John. All right, John, thank you. 750-1310, 750-1310. Take one more here, and I hope to hear from you, 750-1310, Talkback Hour. Bell's Corners, Sean.
Yes, good morning.
Hi, Sean.
I agree with the last two callers very much.
All right.
We need to listen to the public health people and the people who say that, well, the public health people don't know what they're doing because they said this at one time and now they're saying this. Well, we have to remember that they're learning. This is a new virus. They've been learning all along. You can't expect them to know everything about it at the very beginning.
Okay.
And, I agree with the woman who called in a while back and said, other people have had it much worse. Since the very beginning of this, I've been saying I'm so tired of the whiners, and because how on earth did we ever get through World War II? How on earth did we, with the restrictions that were on then? How on earth did Britain ever get through the Blitz?
Yeah, we're not rationing food, right?
No, we're not.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. We're not rationing food. We're not being bombed every night.
Yes.
I mean, we're not. People had to do certain things back then, and they were prosecuted if they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, if you, you're kind of taking me back to a line of thinking early on in the first lockdown when I was saying to people, you're not being asked to live through the Depression and then storm the beaches of Normandy, right?
Yeah, and this has been 2 years.
Yeah, it's been a rough 2 years. You're being asked
6 years in the 1940s.
Sure, Sean. You're being, some people. I mean, it's been tough on some people, especially the entrepreneurs who have lost, dreams and businesses. But a lot of people have been asked to stay home, order your food, which they do. Tip the Uber driver, then sit in your pajamas on the couch and watch Netflix. Spare me, give me a break. How rough your life is.
I mean, I'm a person. I'm be 70 in March.
Yes.
I've had heart surgery. I've had cancer, and so I'm vulnerable. And I probably will have an invitation out to friends for Christmas dinner, but I'm probably not going to go. you know, and I didn't go last year.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not going to sit home and cry.
Okay. All
and
right.
say boo-hoo. So I'm just saying to people, get a grip. You know, this is not, we're not starving to death. We're not, you know, being bombed. Think of the people in Britain that were bombed every night for nights and nights and nights. You know, we're not.
It's not the Blitz.
And as I said in the beginning, this is a type of war that we're going through, you know, against this virus. And, you know, anyway, that's my bit.
It's a good one. Thank you. Okay. Bridget in Embrun.
Yes, hi.
Hi,
Rob.
Bridget. Hi.
My take on this, short answer, we should close the airports. I mean, people locally, we're restricting ourselves. We're not, you know, some of us are losing our jobs and thinking, well, then stop importing people. Let's just block the airports.
Okay, but, you know, look, I'm just going to throw out some kind of example there. Well, you know, let's say my mom lived in the UK and she was sick and I had to go see her. Whatever. Are you saying I'm not allowed to come back? Is that what you're saying? I'm not allowed to come back? I'm not allowed to come back. I'm a Canadian with a Canadian passport. You're not going to let me into my own country?
We should be vetting the travels. That would be
well, that's their plan. That's their plan. Even if I'm fully vaccinated, I'm going to have to show a negative test. I'm going to have to go into quarantine for 14 days.
But the reason for travel should be vetted. If you're just going on holiday, right now we're in a pandemic. What is this thing about going on vacation? People are losing their jobs.
Right. So, you know, if I show up at the Ottawa airport, for example, I have a ticket to St. Lucia.
Yeah.
You're saying, sorry, sir, you can't go to St. Lucia?
Yeah, for now. We're in a pandemic.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
All
Thanks,
right,
Rob.
Bridget, thank you. Okay, so look, there's all kinds of opinions, varying opinions out there. You've heard it here in the first 45 minutes. And for the first time this morning, we've cleared the phone lines. We've cleared the decks. We still have about 10 minutes more to take your calls and hear your opinions. Maybe you have an entirely different view, and that's why we do the Talkback Hour, to hear it right here on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
When it came to opening the business, because I was so young, there was a lot that I didn't know about management, financial management, management of people, all around management, I think is the word that I always come back to. I think that I always had a passion and I knew that I wanted to create a space for people to get their hair done, but I had no idea, even having studied business management, what it really took to open a business as well as sustain a successful business. So in 2014, I was actually working with Angela Sutcliffe. She was my business coach at the time, and she was like, what's your niche? Like, what separates you from other salons? And when we started to really dig, it was the curls. It was the fact that we work with all curl types, curly, kinky, wavy, coily, which is how we identify our curl types. And then you have straight hair as well, of course. But you know, more than 70% of the world has some sort of curl pattern to their hair. And we just realized that that was not being addressed. It wasn't something we learned about in school. So I went to the States and I traveled all over to kind of gain the information that I have now to be able to share it with our clients and as well as with other stylists. So in March when it came, I thought it was gonna last, a week, 2 weeks, I think it started off at 2 weeks. And I was like, cool, I have 2 weeks to just relax, that's fine. So I was actually in a position where I was not happy, so to say, but I was a little bit happy, to be honest, just because of what I was experiencing personally. Now, when that extension started to happen, it was not a great feeling. It was very uncomfortable not knowing how I was going to support myself financially. So I'm so excited about the Academy. It's something that I started and I launched it during the pandemic. So I've been teaching for a number of years. I've been educating for a number of years. I educated at Algonquin. I've educated at Versailles Hair Academy. And I've also educated in my own space, in this space and my old space up on Greenbank. And so it was just a continuum of what, I've been doing for these years. When we have a client in our chair, it's not just about making your hair look great. It's about how do you go home and take what we've just taught you and emulate that. So now with a world where people want to quote unquote be diverse and inclusive, what does that really look like in a salon setting? And for me, it looks like being able to invite any curl type, any hair type, really, because I can take care of straight hair types just as well as, I can take care of curls. And we cater to all curl types regardless of what you look like on the outside. We got you.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Yes, they are. And your opinions are always welcome around here. More public health measures being imposed in some places. More will be announced today. All of it because of the news story that's been dominating the news cycle for the last 2 weeks. Omicron. Asking, are these the right moves for the government to be making right now? Do you agree with imposing more health restrictions? Should governments be going further? Be tougher? Maybe close some businesses, impose local travel restrictions. Hey, they've done that before. Capacity limits. They've done that on businesses. NHL games sold out. Should we still be doing that, for example? Or is it an overreaction, given what we know about Omicron so far? Maybe you think it's an overreaction. Whatever your opinion is, 750-1310, within reason. We're open to discussing just about anything on the Rob Snow Show. The Ontario situation, Dr. Kieran Moore, the province's chief medical officer of health, did do a briefing with the news media yesterday. I think the big thing to come out of it is that he feels that whatever measures are going to be on the way, imposed or reimposed, might be a better way to put it, reimposed, he thinks they have to be province-wide and not on a region-by-region basis. He said yesterday that a regional approach to public health measures was designed with the Delta variant in mind, and it wouldn't be as effective at trying to contain the Omicron variant because the Omicron variant is far more contagious. He said he wants to have a consistent approach across the entire province, whether there's, one case or 101 cases. The measures, he thinks, have to be the same, province-wide. Now, whether the premier takes that advice and runs with it, that's another matter. I guess that's another conversation for another day, and I don't think we're going to hear what the premier has in mind for us. Not today, anyway. I think he's going to say something like, we're taking the measures under advisement. We defer to the health officials, and we're still considering what the health officials are telling us. But there's a cabinet meeting supposed to start in about 10 minutes. And then a 2 o'clock news conference. We have a correspondent there, Richard Southern, covering it, okay? Now, that news conference is supposed to be about expanding the booster shot program. It's not supposed to be about public health measures, although I'm sure the news media will have lots of questions about that. But, we mentioned what's going on in Kingston. They announced some public health measures that come into effect on Monday. Restaurants, bars, no serving food after 10 p.m., no serving booze after 9 p.m. You have to be seated to be served, maximum 4 people at a table, no live music, no dancing, no loud music. $5,000 a day fines as well. I thought I heard something about new capacity limits for gatherings, but I don't have that information right offhand. Last week in Sudbury, they reimposed some public health measures. Limits on the size of organized public events, social gatherings, no more than 10 people indoors, 25 people outdoors. Indoor sports and recreation activities have to make sure physical distancing is in place. No contact during team sports. Shopping malls must reduce the volume levels of music and prevent lineups at the shopping malls, things like that. And, I read some of it's kind of like some of these regions, they're tiptoeing into reimposing some of these measures. It's nothing at all like the lockdowns of the past. And I hope we don't have to go back to that. But jeepers, after 2 years, when it comes to COVID and how politicians will react to COVID, it's like never say never. Remember, David, when all of this started, I had someone on from Breakfast Television because I thought it was going to last for 2 weeks. It'll be over in 2 weeks. I just need to tell me what I should watch on Netflix for the next 2 weeks.
Just give me 2 shows.
Give me 2 shows that I can binge for 2 weeks. That was 2 years ago.
Seems silly now.
2 years ago. Windsor, they're doing the same kind of stuff, right? Limiting social gatherings to 10 people indoors, 25 people outdoors. Limit indoor capacity at restaurants. They're doing that in Windsor already, 50%. Weddings, funerals, religious ceremonies must have no receiving lines, have assigned seating for guests, require guests to wear masks at all times except when sitting. And, this is the one thing that has Captain Suspenders from the Highlands of Lanark all upset. You have to keep a contact tracing log of guests at social gatherings in Windsor, Essex. Ron in Brockville. Ron, good morning, Ron. Hello, Ron. Nope, Ron's not there. That's fine. Joe in Ottawa. Good morning, Joe. You're on City News.
Hey, good morning, Rob.
Yeah, I'm good, Joe. Thank you. What do you think about the reimposition of health restrictions?
I'm not too strong on it. I have conditions to restrictions.
Okay.
Foreign travel in and out, no. Which they should have done a long time ago, and I think we'd be in a lot better shape. As far as restaurants and whatnot, like a lot of people have mentioned in the past, that when your Costco's are full, if your Walmarts are full, if you can give these restaurants and small businesses a break by, spacing out the tables, etc., but allowing them to still survive,
Yes.
So that's about where I stand. Like myself, I'm vaxxed. I'll go for my triple vax in February, and so conditions, but with
conditions with conditions.
Restrictions with conditions that aren't as bad as they were before. That got a lot of people upset.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to mention this, a couple of provinces are getting in on it too. Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island at the schools in Nova Scotia. School sports teams limited to skills training only. No competitions, no assemblies, no Christmas concerts. You're canceling Christmas. Early visitors only. Limited access to cafeterias. PEI, tougher rules coming. Everyone traveling to PEI will be rapid tested. Each person will be asked to wait 2 hours before they interact with anyone. So, for example, my wife's father, my stepfather, lives, 25 minutes away from the Confederation Bridge, the fixed link that you drive from New Brunswick to PEI. He lives like 25 minutes away from the point, the PEI side. So if my wife and I traveled to Prince Edward Island for the Christmas holidays, we'd basically have to fiddle around for 2 hours before we went to her dad's place, because they'll want to call you first and get in touch with you. That's what they're doing there. I love this one. There will be no traveling to and from PEI to take part in sports, arts, or cultural activities, and the only exception is the Quebec Major Junior Hockey team that plays in Prince Edward Island.
Oh, it's understandable.
Except for our junior hockey team. Yeah. They can take part.
Reasonable limits.
Reasonable. Yeah. You're special. Michael in Orleans. Michael. Morning, Michael.
Politics and government for quite a while, and I was saying to your screener, all of these lockdowns and choices that are being made are not being made by our best and our brightest. The creme de la creme are not in public service.
Okay, Michael, sorry, I got a bad phone there. I'll take this one. Last call of the hour. Chantel, Ottawa. What do you think? Restrictions are coming, Chantel. What do you think? Good idea, bad idea?
Good idea.
Good idea.
But
okay.
I always thought that everybody should be in a bubble. I've always thought that from the beginning, that Ottawa should be in a bubble.
Okay.
Toronto should be in a bubble. Nobody should be traveling outside of the high numbers.
Okay.
So I think people should be in bubbles.
In bubbles. Okay.
Yeah,
all right. All right. And Ottawa, what, can we have an Ottawa-Gatineau bubble?
Yeah, if the numbers are lower, I mean, I don't want people traveling from Windsor or Peel. I mean, they need to be.
Well, I don't know about Peel now, but Kingston is the hot spot now. Yeah.
There you go.
All right, Chantel. Thank you for all of your calls. It's greatly appreciated. I hate to say it, but I don't think that'll be the last time we talk about that topic. We'll be back right after the 11 o'clock news. Lots of news out of Renfrew County this week. We're going to be up the line with Bruce McIntyre from the Eganville Leader coming up next. This is City News.
A common holiday.
Local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, December 15th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now under a freezing rain warning, -3 in Ottawa, -2 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Ottawa's Chief Medical Officer of Health says there has been a significant increase in COVID cases in the capital. Dr. Vera Etches, in a memo to Council, says this has added pressure on the operations at Ottawa Public Health. Etches feels these will not be alleviated soon. Since clinical trials of the booster shot of COVID vaccine brings a strong immune response, OPH is working on additional strategies to limit the impact of the Omicron variant. More on the strategies from OPH apparently coming later in the week. Right now, there are 283,000 people in Ottawa alone who are eligible for the vaccine booster who have not received the shot. The health unit encouraging the 50-plus age group to get that shot as soon as possible. The province is reporting 1,808 more cases of COVID today and 9 additional deaths. Ottawa has 117 of these new cases, 18 more in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 10 in Eastern Ontario, 6 new cases in Renfrew. 6% of the 44,700 tests that were done for these numbers came back positive. The province will be announcing new measures to combat COVID. These will take effect province-wide. City News Queen Park reporter Richard Southern with more.
Premier Ford will face the media today, and he is expected to announce an expanded booster shot plan. That's when he holds his 2 p.m. news conference alongside the Health Minister, Solicitor General, and Dr. Moore. He's expected to announce booster doses will be sped up. As it stands now, those 18 and over have to wait until January 4th to get their booster, but sources tell City News that will be sped up dramatically. The Globe and Mail reports that Ontario will as well mobilize the private sector to increase booster doses. The wild card today, though, is if we'll see any new public health measures announced. Premier Ford will meet with his cabinet in just under half an hour to discuss recommendations on that front from Dr. Moore. Sources tell me those recommendations include everything from possibly reinstating capacity limits on retail to possibly expanding the proof of vax program, even the possibility of banning the sale of food and alcohol in sports venues. Richard Southern, City News.
City News Time, 11:03. The COVID-19 Omicron variant dominated Prime Minister Trudeau's latest conference call with the premiers. It's not clear if the federal government is going to make changes to current travel restrictions, but several provinces are putting new public health restrictions in place. This comes when the head of the British Health Security Agency says Omicron is displaying a staggering growth rate compared with previous variants. Renfrew County is warning of a significant weather event that will impact travel and services today. Freezing rain warnings are up across eastern Ontario. Now, City News meteorologist Jill Taylor says in the Ottawa-Smith Falls area, we should avoid freezing rain for the most part. That will start as snow. It may stay cooler longer in Renfrew County, though, leading to freezing rain, ice pellets, and snow, all possible from this afternoon into this evening. Now, here is your forecast with Jill.
Well, we're okay through the morning. It's the afternoon. Heads up for some freezing rain late afternoon. Could see 2 to 3 centimeters of snow and ice pellets, some ice accretion as well. Greatest chance of that freezing rain for areas near the Quebec border. The high today +1. Rising temperatures overnight with periods of light rain. For today, the high late this evening +1.
And right now in Ottawa, -3. In Smith Falls, it's -2 degrees. The OPP has a section of the 17 closed after a 3-vehicle collision. It was around 6:30 this morning. 2 cars and a tractor-trailer collided at Beeline Road. A detour is in place on Highway 17 from Beeline to Round Lake Road. 3 people taken to hospital. One of them airlifted in serious condition. Both the driver and passenger in the rig, though, were not hurt. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
It's winter time and the weather's fine. The snow on the woods and field when I reveal my snowmobile. Thrill by gully and hill. Baby, it'll make you feel like an outdoor meal on a snowmobile. Listen to the sound of the bells go round when the winter carnival's here. And oh, what fun at the crack of the gun when the whole gang disappears. The race is on from the bush to the pond and back where the judges feel. You've won their seal for the snowmobile. You've won their seal for the snowmobile.
Bruce McIntyre, not on the snowmobile today. He's with the Eganville leader. He's here with Valley View every Wednesday morning. Where are you now?
Good morning, Rob. I'm on Carling Avenue in Ottawa.
Oh, you are? Okay.
I want to escape that freezing rain.
Well, you know, it's a good move. I just have I have my my weather app open on my phone, and I'm looking at the radar, and it's good that you're on Carling Avenue in Ottawa because it's headed right for Eganville. It's just the freezing rain it's like taking a beeline right for Eganville. It looks like, I would say the freezing rain, it's probably snowing right there now, and the freezing rain is going to start around noon, I think, in Eganville, and it looks like it's if you go north, I would say Pembroke might be spared the worst of it.
Okay.
Not Pembroke, Petawawa. Pardon me, Petawawa. I think Pembroke's still going to get it, but I think up a little further, like Petawawa, Chalk River, Deep River.
Deep River. Yeah.
I don't think the freezing rain, the stretch that I'm looking at here, doesn't go quite that far. But
Okay, so
Eganville, Renfrew, Calabogie, Killaloe, Barry's Bay, Combermere, places like that.
You know what you've done, Rob? You just gave all the list of our readership. That was very good. Thank you.
Oh, you like that? You like that? Okay, good. So, look, it's great to hear from you. Everybody wants to know, of course, about COVID. What's going on with COVID? What are you hearing? What do you know?
Well,
what are the officials saying?
Dr. Cushman was ecstatic because we reached a milestone recently. 90% of all eligible persons in the 12 years over have at least one shot in their arm, and majority are getting the second shot in boosters. And we have 6 new cases today. It's wintertime. It's kids in the classroom. It's going to happen. Luckily, Christmas break starts in 2 days, so the little darlings will all be home. So maybe that might slow down the numbers, but it's natural. I mean, now we're also coming into flu season, so it's going to be fun. We just keep going one day at a time, as Dr. Cushman says, but he's happy that the Renfrew people are 90%, at least one shot in the arm.
Okay. And everybody is waiting to hear what the Premier will say. 2 o'clock news conference again, Dr. Moore and the Premier at 2 o'clock. For the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, which is kind of Cornwall, Hawkesbury, United Counties, their public health official is having an online briefing with the news media right now. So, I mean, there's a lot happening right now with...
There is. A lot happening in the Valley.
Yeah. Anastasia Kuzik, Natalie Warmadam, Carol Culleton were all murdered by Basil Barutsky back in 2015. This is Bruce's big story in this week's Eganville Leader, and I encourage everyone to read about it. There are going to be developments on this. An announcement is anticipated from the coroner's office. What's going to happen?
22nd. Well, I'm glad the announcement being made in Pembroke. The biggest fear we had when they announced there would be an inquest a couple of years ago, they said there would be an inquest. They didn't say where. And that left, and we called to see. They had no site specific, and we were concerned that the same thing was going to happen that has happened time and time again. Basil Barutsky trial, murders took place in Renfrew County. They moved it to Ottawa. Dr. Christine Atsis killed somebody in Renfrew County, moved to Ottawa. Basil Barutsky inquest, no date given, no time given. We thought it was going to move to Ottawa. We still don't know. But having the announcement in Pembroke on the January 22nd, which is exactly 6 years and 5 months of the day that he committed those atrocities, is a good sign that it will be in Pembroke, hopefully. There's lots of facilities available. We have the college. We have the Best Western Hotel. Everything is suited to accommodate an inquest. So we're hoping, fingers crossed. I mean, it's terrible to say you're hoping, but an inquest has to take place. And the biggest question put forth by the advocacy groups up here is, how does a man like Basil Barutsky navigate the justice system to be able to get a gun and commit those 3 murders? He was in jail. So many ways he slipped through the cracks. He was supposed to court-ordered sessions for anger management.
Yeah.
Never attended a single session.
Stay away from people, everything like this,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so the inquest will take place. It's going to open up a lot of raw wounds, but you have to cleanse it, lack of a better word, have to see what's going on and help the healing process.
So the announcement in the 3rd week of January is specifically about what? Then
the parameters, the mandate,
the parameters. Okay, yeah.
The date, the mandate. I'm sure they'll identify. I'm not sure they'll identify the 5 individuals, up to 5 individuals that make up the coroner's inquest jury. They take 5 individuals from the area. So again, we don't know who they are, if they are going to have 5. So that's all those questions will be answered on January 22nd. But it gives a reminder that it was, it's a slow process. It was a beautiful sunny day on September 22nd. I remember I was sitting by the.
I remember that day. I'll never forget that day. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the big story of the Valley this week, and we'll just have to see what happens. And no coroner. I think it might be Dr. Stewart.
Did the authorities kind of have to be dragged into calling this inquest? Has it been a chore to get this inquest called, or?
It was announced in August 2019.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right.
A while ago, and both the county council sent a letter to the coroner's office demanding it be held in the county. Other officials have made inquiries as to bringing it here, so it's a very slow process. I thought it would have been up and running a long time ago, to be honest with you. The women's groups are very they're keeping their mouth shut. They're quiet, but they're frustrated. They thought this would be over and done by now, and the question is, will it do anything? Will it produce results? And hopefully that's what you want coming out of an inquest, to find out what happened, make corrections so it doesn't happen again. But as Joanne Brooks said, she is the coordinator for the Renfrew County Sexual Assault Center. She said no matter what they do, it's still going to happen, but we can maybe find a way to identify it and stop it before it does in most cases. It's still, unfortunately, it will occur, but if we can find a way to stop the majority of it, then that's worth the inquest.
Okay. What are the other big stories?
The big stories, well, we're coming up to Christmas time, of course.
Yes.
Break is coming up. And a good reminder to all your listeners on page 2 of our story. I went to visit a fella the other day. His name is Norm, driving along a country road, and all of a sudden...
Oh, yes.
A truck coming at him, and a big chunk of ice went flying through his windshield. And if you see the pictures, I don't know how he survived, honest to goodness. I mean, he credits his sunglasses, though. He went to buy sunglasses, and he had them on, and he showed me his sunglasses. There were little dents all on both lenses, and that's where the glass shattered. And he said, if I had not bought those new sunglasses, who knows where I'd be right now. There would have been glass fragments in my eyes. So good for him. He's very, very lucky man. And some of our local municipalities are slowly making their own vaccination policies.
Oh, okay.
Porter Valley, which is Eagleville, still doesn't have one. They're still making it non-mandatory for their staff and volunteers, and it's causing a bit of problem in the arena. Kids are allowed to play contact sports, organized hockey, but they can't go figure skating or public skating without double vaccination, and most kids don't have that yet.
Oh, I see.
So, yeah, the counselor is a little confused of what they should do about this, because it just opened up for children recently, and not everyone has an opportunity to get double vaxxed.
I'd be interested to know how Dr. Cushman is going to feel if his colleague at the provincial level, Dr. Moore, says the restrictions, whatever is going to be imposed, and we don't know what they're going to announce, but whatever is going to be imposed has to be province-wide. Whether you're in the 416 area code or you're in Renfrew County, I'm not sure how Dr. Cushman has felt about that in the past, but because your health region would go weeks and weeks and weeks without having a single case. So. Yeah.
Dr. Cushman prefers a regional approach.
He prefers a regional approach. He has in the past. Yeah.
So, but he has to follow marching orders like everybody else does.
Sure.
So, one thing I should mention, Rob, our counselors down in Brudenell, Lindock, Raglan, the counselors refused to give up their seats. One went to court last Friday. Andrea, little background, both she and the other counselor were found in conflict of interest. They were found in violation of code of ethics, and so she launched an appeal on her hearing, and she was granted a stay. So now the township is stuck because they have up to 60 days to get someone in her chair. Her chair is considered vacant, and the judge ordered them not to do that. So right now you have an empty chair sitting at the council table with no representation, and her hearing isn't until late January. So they were told not to do it, but the Municipal Act says they have to do it. They have up to 60 days to fill that occupancy. So they are really torn in the middle. These councillors will cause that little township so much grief. And every time they go to court, the tax money is going towards the court fees, and cha-ching, and it's going to use up at least 10% of their overall budget just on these two in the court cases. It's very unfortunate.
Okay, all right. We got to talk about Chase the Ace, okay? Or Catch the Ace,
Bob.
okay?
Yes.
Somebody is going to win a lot of money tomorrow night in Renfrew.
$700,000 to start. It is the last draw. Somehow they did it, Rob. They went 51 weeks, and what happens tomorrow night is they will make the draw, and whoever name is drawn, they automatically win the weekly prize, which would be about $58,000.
Wow.
Not bad. And if their card matches the envelope has the ace of spades, they'll walk home with that $700,000 plus.
Right.
If it doesn't, then they start drawing names out of the big blue bin until they find one that matches the ace of spades, and that person will win $700,000 plus dollars. And this little lottery has just taken off. And the nice thing about it is they've done it without phone orders and without online ordering. People have to get off their butts and go pay cash for a ticket. And the stores have benefited. People are going shopping, and they don't play. It's just a great all-around. The hospitals raised.
You've kept them in business personally. I mean, let's face it, buying those Catch the Ace tickets. But okay.
Well, I haven't.
Imagine this. I mean, I'd love to know the odds. We got to get an odds maker on here. You do a Catch the Ace where you pull the ace of spades, and that's it. That's the end of the contest. Some of these. Lots of organizations are doing Catch the Ace. Some of them kind of can fizzle out after 3 weeks. Somebody gets the ace. Hey, congratulations, you won $800 or whatever, right? This one goes right down to the last, like the very last card. Last card. Really is what are the odds of that? Come on.
I'd say 52 million.
Oh, man.
How's that?
It's crazy. All right, you're going to buy your ticket. You're going to buy a ticket, right? This may be the last time I speak with you because tomorrow you could win the whole jackpot and I'll never hear from you again.
Well, the question is, I bought a ticket. I put the initials R and D on it. The question is, will R and D share their wealth with me if that one is drawn?
Rob and Dave. Okay. Good luck to everybody trying to catch the ace in Renfrew County, and we'll speak next week from Up the Line. Bruce McIntyre. Safe travels back to the county.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, talk soon. Bruce McIntyre with the Eganville Leader. Coming up next, to focus on real estate. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Center has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our center is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the center. So one being obviously our emergency food program, which is really great. So residents can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Center. We operate this great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring, and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our center the Ottawa Good Food Box, as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years, and Market Mobile is a little younger, started in 2014. So they both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had, layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
News 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Canadian Real Estate Association is out with some new numbers about housing and the housing market. more of a national picture for 2021, and then looking ahead to what things could look like for next year, for what has been, let's face it, historically red-hot housing market in this country. Sean Cathcart joins us this morning here on City News, senior economist, Canadian Real Estate Association. Good morning.
Morning, Rob.
How would you describe this year for Canadian real estate?
Well, you said red hot. I mean, white hot might be more accurate.
Okay. Smoking hot.
Smoking hot. I mean, the problem is that there's a ton of demand and not enough homes for people to buy. And so what you get is, as you know, multiple offers on so many of these things, and people compete the prices higher, which is why we're seeing prices do what they do. And one of the reasons we've seen so many sales, another sort of wild card, has been people are moving around the country like crazy because of COVID and the changes to our lives. And so when people who have, lived in the same house for 40 years in a city and suddenly decide to pull up stakes and move to a small community, they're rolling into town with sometimes $1 million in cash. And so that's another big a wild card that didn't exist before COVID.
Yeah. And how does that show up in your data? How do you see that in the data, reflected in your data?
Well, one way that it shows up is that we're going to have about 670,000 home sales for all of Canada in 2021. And the previous record from last year was only 550. So when I say people are moving around a lot. You can see that also in the Statistics Canada migration numbers, which show that people are moving around more than ever before. And if you don't have to commute into that office anymore, maybe you go back to live in Halifax or something. And we're seeing a lot of that.
Sure. And, if you've been, for example, if you've been in the GTA housing market for a long time and you have more than $1 million in equity and you sell, you can relocate to some of the smaller Canadian cities like a Halifax or a Moncton or a Fredericton, or be something even smaller, a nice town or something. And you're doing really well. I mean, you're like, yes, I will take that for cash. Thank you very much. Right?
Yeah. And you don't want to be a first-time buyer in Halifax going for that starter bungalow, and an empty nester couple from Toronto shows up with their $1 million. It makes it even harder.
Yeah. So it's not seasonally adjusted. National average home price $720,850, November 2021, up 19.6%. compared to the same month last year. Like, put that figure into some kind of historical perspective. 19%. How extraordinary is that? Has that ever happened before?
No, biggest gain of all time. And certainly in dollars, it's far larger than anything that's ever happened. The only thing comparable would be maybe back in the mid-1980s. We had a few years in a row where it was in the mid-teens. Or mid to high teens, so not quite as high as this year, but for a more sustained time period. So that was cumulative. Mm-hmm. So we're not quite to that level yet. This is 1 year, and we're actually forecasting things to slow down to about 7.5% price growth next year, just because, higher interest rates for one thing, and the fact that a lot of people are just going to be reaching their limits of affordability after the last year that we've had.
Okay. It's a supply issue at its heart, right? You said that, and a lot of people have said, we need to build more homes. More homes. How many homes? Do you have a number? Like, how many homes short are we?
Well, there's a report out from Scotiabank that tried to get to the heart of that. I think that we need
about 2 million or something.
It could be as high as 2 million. I think one of the problems is that we look at a new single-family home with 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and a yard, and a 700 square foot 1-bedroom apartment called to both units. And so when CMHC comes out and says, don't worry, we're building enough units, but 60% of the completions in recent months have been condo apartments, when all the millennials have gone from their 20s to their 30s, there's a mismatch of the type of thing that we're building. And so that's the biggest thing. I think that if what we had been building all along was this missing middle that we've been talking about for 10 years, but still somehow missing, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in. But the problem is for demographically speaking, when we think about the millennial cohort, the whole marriage and kids thing tends to happen pretty mechanically in those 30s, and they're mostly in their 30s now. And so the it's really been sort of, if we wanted to sit in the shade of the affordability of the housing affordability tree, we should have started planting it 10 years ago, So it's kind of hard to fix this
Sean, we've reached you here in Ottawa today.
Yeah.
A lot of those, in decades past, a lot of those young families would move into homes that would be certain generations in Ottawa would be familiar with, called compo homes, right? Very modest homes, right?
I'm talking to you from one right now.
You're in a compo home.
I am.
The thing is, now I don't know if builders could build a compo home just based on the zoning, the fees, the value of the land. I wonder if the compo home, which was the starter home for a lot, those days are gone now in a city like Ottawa.
I think part of the conversation where we could have a bit more of a mature conversation, maybe, I don't mean mature in the pejorative sense, but just in terms of bringing the conversation into the age that we live in, is to maybe stop talking so much about house prices and start talking more about property prices. Because my compo home has a replacement value of about $200,000, but it's sitting on a piece of dirt that's worth about $700,000. And so it doesn't matter that you tear it down and put something else up here. The only thing that really is profitable to tear this down and put something else up here is one of those big 5-bedroom, 5-bathroom, $2.5 million places. And that's unfortunately what you're seeing spring up in place of some of these sort of World War II era teardowns. And so I guess the first thing would be a zoning change, so to get some of these big lots that could house 4 families but that have a single family home on them to be zoned so that they can accommodate more density. I don't think the solution to average density is to have a sea of 50-year-old single family homes and then put up a big condo tower in the middle of it, So
all right, Sean. So, look, white hot, red hot, smoking hot, 2021, a record breaker all around. It will moderate, though. It'll moderate. It'll still, the market's still going to go up, just not as much. That's basically it, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're starting, the demand-supply conditions for all of Canada. We're at 1.8 months of inventory right now, which is a record low. Okay. And we're 2 weeks away. We're 2 weeks away from the start of 2022. So we're coming into the year the same way we were coming into last year. We think it'll moderate because of higher interest rates and higher prices. We think the sales numbers will moderate for no other reason other than there's not enough to buy. But you never know because we can't see how many buyers are out there right now waiting to pounce on what comes out in the spring, and we can't see how many sellers are out there that are going to list. And so we could get another surprise in 2022. I think the demand is definitely still there. It's not gone anywhere.
Thank you, Sean. Great stuff. Yeah, very insightful. Sean Cathcart is a senior economist, Canadian Real Estate Association. News coming up, then we'll turn our attention to inflation. Still ahead, on the way, and on our program. He is the finance critic for the official opposition, Conservative MP. The riding is Carleton. His name is Pierre Poilievre. That's next on City News.
News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Wednesday, the 15th of December. Good morning. I'm Jason White. A freezing rain warning is in effect right now. -2 in Ottawa under a mostly cloudy sky. It's -1 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. Freezing rain is expected this afternoon first, possibly falling as snow or ice pellets before quickly changing over to freezing rain. A few hours of freezing rain is in store for Ottawa, the Valley, and Smiths Falls, which are all under a freezing rain warning. Up to 2 millimeters of ice accretion is possible today. Ottawa's Emergency Operations Centre has been reactivated as local COVID-19 numbers climb and local health officials stare down the Omicron variant. Ottawa's Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Vera Etches, says more of us need to get our third doses of COVID-19 vaccines in order to alleviate pressures on Ottawa Public Health's case and contact management operations and to ensure vulnerable people don't end up in hospital. Quebec's health minister telling a Montreal radio station today the number of new COVID-19 infections in that province will jump to about 2,300 when the data is released today. As case counts soar, Quebec's College of Physicians recommends Premier François Legault's government impose public health measures on holiday gatherings. Meanwhile, Ontario is reporting 1,808 new cases today. 9 more Ontarians have died of the virus. City News Time, 11:33. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Opinionated? Me? Wait till you hear our next guest. Pierre Poilievre is the Conservative Member of Parliament. The riding is Carleton. He's the finance critic for the official opposition. He's on City News this morning. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Rob.
The latest consumer price index is out, the inflation rate, so to speak. It's 4.7%. What's your reaction to the number?
Well, as liberals would say, it's just inflation. We're now at the highest inflation rate since records were kept starting in 1991. And that means that Canadians are paying more for the basics that they require to live: food, clothing, housing, and energy. And it's about to get a lot worse because Trudeau plans major tax increases on wages, energy, and alcohol that kick in on January 1st. So higher prices, which means real reduction in people's purchasing power.
Okay. What can be done about it, in your opinion?
Well, the cost of government is driving up the cost of living. $500 billion of inflationary deficits have meant more dollars chasing fewer goods, which always leads to higher prices. And the government, to pay for these deficits, has had the Bank of Canada print a lot of that money. And when you flood the economy with cheap cash, the price of everything else gets bid up. So in other words, we need to bring down the cost of government in order to bring down the cost of living. And that's what Conservatives are fighting for.
Okay. Well, your political opponents would say you mean cuts, Mr. Poilievre. That means cuts. Bringing down the cost of government means you're going to cut something.
What we need is we get back to the normal pre-COVID levels of spending that we had only 2 years ago. We can't make these these so-called temporary programs permanent.
Right.
We can't continue to pay people not to work. We can't keep stroking big checks to large corporations. We need to get spending back to normal pre-COVID levels so that.
Okay, but where are we? Look, Mr. Poilievre, I'm willing to give you all the time you want. You know that. But are we in normal pre-COVID times right now? We have a new variant. Really, nobody knows what's going on. Ontario reported 1,808 cases today, 117 cases just in our city alone here. These are, what would you say if we said these are not normal pre-COVID times? We're not there yet. What do you think about that?
I think that the problems you identify will not be solved with copious new government spending. There is 1 million vacant jobs in Canada today, Rob. We can't pay people not to work when employers can't find workers to fill vacant positions. We need to get people working again. Otherwise, you have 1 million people spending without producing, which of course is going to drive up costs for everyone else. We need to rein in the cost and the growth of government spending, which has been growing out of control since 2015, since pre-COVID period.
Yeah.
And so these are the steps that are immediately required. And there are things that we could do in the next couple of weeks, like canceling the increase in the carbon tax, in the payroll tax, and in the alcohol tax, all of which are going to further stimulate inflation in just a few weeks.
Okay. This is it. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say there was another data point that came out today. The Canadian Real Estate Association.
Yeah, we just had them on. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't catch that. But as you know, 20% increase in real estate prices. Now, this is interesting because Liberals claim that some foreign supply chain disruption is the cause of Canadian inflation. Land doesn't have a supply chain. Land is right underneath our feet. It doesn't get stuck at a port in some faraway place. And yet land prices, raw land, is up 20% year over year. And house prices are up 20%. Remember, almost all the houses on the market today were built before COVID ever happened. So you can't blame COVID supply chain issues for that. And yet, the biggest inflationary part of our economy is actually in this area. And what that means is that young people are shut out of housing, and the gap between rich and poor gets worse.
Yeah, you'll get no disagreement from me on that, but what is to blame for a 19% increase in housing in 1 year, which has never happened before? I just had a senior economist on from the Canadian Real Estate Association. Never happened before that home prices went up 19% in a year in Canada. What caused that, in your opinion?
Well, that's a very good question. Why is it that all of a sudden, starting in May of 2020, real estate prices started to skyrocket? Why? It wasn't immigration. There was no immigration during COVID. It wasn't rising wages. Wages actually went down. In fact, people weren't even allowed to go and look at houses that they were buying. So what caused it? Well, it's very obvious. The Bank of Canada started printing money in exactly that time frame. The cash started rolling out of the Bank of Canada into the financial system in order to bring down borrowing costs for the government, but that money flooded into mortgage markets. We saw a $192 billion surge in mortgage lending, a 100% increase in the number of mortgages granted to investors since the Bank of Canada began printing money. So when you flood the financial system with cheap cash, it's going to make its way into mortgages that will bid up housing prices. So that is what happened, and that is why we have the housing bubble.
But you would agree there's also there's a supply story there. There's not enough supply. We haven't built enough homes, and I don't know how much the federal government bears responsibility for that, since municipalities control so much about the availability of housing in their own municipalities through zoning regulations. I mean, look at the fight we had over the urban boundary here in this city, right? So
that is absolutely true. Municipalities have made, and provinces have made this one of the most difficult places in which to build housing, Rob. However, that is not a new problem.
Right.
We didn't lose 30% of or 20% of our housing supply all of a sudden in spring 2020. Our supply has been constant since that time. So what explains the recent surge in house prices? The only new phenomenon that did not pre-exist that increase is the massive surge of cash into the mortgage system that the Bank of Canada has produced. Everything else existed before then. The supply constraints are now many years old. The only thing new is the printing of money that has inflated this bubble.
I do wonder what a 4.7% rate of inflation is going to mean for the cost of government longer term, even if this does, say, moderate and it's not, it moderates back down to where the bank wants it to be, between 1% and 3%, preferably at 2%. But we're already hearing it from organized labor, for example, public service unions. they're not going to accept, 1% or 2%. They're going to want the cost of living. Also, we have to finance this debt. There will come a time when the government of Canada goes to auction bonds in the international bond market, and a higher interest rate will be demanded because interest rates are going to go up. The central banks have already signaled that. So what is that going to do to the ongoing carrying costs of the government? I think that's a question that needs some illumination. What do you think, Mr. Poilievre?
I agree with you. Just yesterday or the day before in the Globe and Mail, Bill Robson from the C.D. Howe Institute wrote an article entitled, quote, "Brace for Impact."
Brace for impact, yeah.
Rate hikes are coming. And he explains that interest rates are now artificially low because central banks have been printing all of this money to supply cheap debt to governments. We have artificially low rates, but all that does is balloon debt and asset prices in the short run. And then down the road, those bubbles are burst when rates return to their normal levels. By the way, there's only so much that Canada will be able to do when, and this is why the Liberal poor planning is so egregious, when rates start to rise around the world, we're going to be in a lot of trouble because of all the debt that Trudeau has piled on and that he's encouraged households to pile on.
Yeah, I don't want to get too technical, but I made note of this yesterday. The yield, the rate on a 10-year Government of Canada bond is 1.44% right now, 1.44%. I would like to know because interest rates, the economists tell me, are going to go up 4 times next year, probably 25 basis points a time. So let's say that pushes up that interest rate, and it's not, this time next year, you and I are doing this interview, and it's not 1.4%, instead it's 2.4%. How much more does it cost the Government of Canada in interest when the interest rate's not 1.4%, instead it's 2.4%? I bet you it's tens of billions of dollars.
Well, Rob, I asked that exact question to our finance minister when she was at committee about a week ago, and she said she could not answer it. The answer is actually quite simple. We have $1.2 trillion of debt. Mm-hmm. So if there is a 1% average increase in the interest rate on all of that debt, then it is $12 billion.
$12 billion.
That's just a 1 percentage point across the board increase in the average rate we pay on all of our debt.
Wow.
And that's just government debt. But Rob, we have $9 trillion of personal, corporate, and government debt combined. So a 1% average increase in interest rates across our entire economy equals $90 billion in extra costs on mortgage payments, credit card payments, small business loans, government debt. All of that body of debt will start to become more expensive. And that's why I say we risk detonation if we don't reduce those debt levels or increase our output significantly before interest rates rise.
Okay. I do make note that, because I've never seen this in all of the inflation reports that I have ever read from Statistics Canada, a paragraph like this, and I'll quote it, and you give me your closing comment. Inflation is often compared to changes to average wages. In November 2021, the CPI rose 4.7% on a year-over-year basis. Wage data, which maintains employment composition by occupation and tenure from the Labor Force Survey, found that wages rose 2.8% during the same period, meaning that on average, prices rose faster than wages, and Canadians experienced a decline in purchasing power. How fair is it to say a dollar doesn't go as far as it used to?
It's not only fair, it's undeniable. That's what inflation does. It's like, if you imagine, back in the days of Henry VIII, he used to clip off the edges of the coins so that he could use those edges to melt down and make more coins and spend more money on his own luxuries. That's what government does when it causes inflation. It clips off the edge of your loonie and makes it less valuable. The 4.7% inflation means roughly 5% of your loonie has been clipped off the edge, and you buy less with that same loonie. So basically, they're cutting your wages by inflating the costs of everything you buy with them.
Okay. Good to hear from you.
The inflation tax, Rob.
Yep. Taxation without legislation. I mean, that is nothing new. Thank you, Mr. Polyev. Speak soon,
Great
sir.
to be with you,
All
Rob.
the best. Bye. The member from Carleton, with he's in the sweet spot politically right now. He's been the inflation hawk, and that's the issue. That there's COVID and inflation. They are the issues right now. 11:48. Municipal affairs. Talk a little bit about how this race is shaping up. Someone, a member of our council, has just said, "No, I'm not running for mayor." So we'll tell you who that is. Lots of speculation that someone else on the council will say, "Yeah, I'm running for mayor, but I won't tell you till next year." And 3 candidates have already said, "I'm in now that Jim Watson is out." We'll review it all with Pat Aguccione, our City Hall insider here on the Rob Snow Show. Coming up next, Pat is managing editor at the Ottawa Community Voice, and this is City News.
Opening a business especially in a pandemic, in that kind of situation, is very challenging. First, people don't know me. People don't know my product. To build a new clientele, to build a trust for them, to show them that I care about it. I do love my food. That was the biggest challenge. And of course, in all lockdown, where I had to face it regards my employee, girls, ladies, what they work for me. I didn't want to tell them, sorry, I'm closed, I'm not having a job for you. No, they have families, they have kids to feed. So this is very important because we are family orientated. And we decided to open. We, of course, essential business. So been very tough, very, very tough, as we didn't see people on the road. Market was completely quiet, but we knew that we have to wait, and we knew that we're gonna be fine. In this town, we built online shop, Vedel Online, and we did Uber Eats, which one is picking up and is very, very popular. We have a really good feedback. So this is the song from my heart. And and we try to expand. I'm thinking about opening another location. So I want to make Vedel famous. I want to make the Vedel place to be for all the families with kids. Try the traditional food, what their grandparents cooked in the countries when they're from, or even Canadian people. They're more than welcome to come and try our famous pierogis. I try to be passionate about my food, organic food made with love, with all homemade, organic. So you can find food from all over the Europe: Polish, German, Ukrainian, Romanian, French, Armenian. So all kind of different types of food. Homemade lunches. We focus on the homemade lunches, grandma style. I keep always saying, like in my Genia Babcia house, how she cooked. I wanted this love and this food over here because I believe that will bring all people around me. And all the organic cold cuts, lovely selection of sausages, cheeses, European cheeses, great selections of mustards, French cookies. All what you need from Europe you can find here at the Vedel Touch of Europe. If you think good way, that's it. You have to. I had the option to cry in the corner and say, oh, pandemic is coming. No, you need to stand up and fight for it and have your eyes open, think.
Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So we've just learned by way of our correspondent in Toronto, Richard Southern, that the Premier's news conference has been pushed back now until 3:30, but we will have all the details for you here on City News, whatever the Premier's going to announce today. It was supposed to be about booster shots and the timeline and expansion of the booster shot program. But he will be there with Dr. Kieran Moore, and you can imagine the news media will have many, many questions for the Premier and the Medical Officer of Health about Omicron, about health measures, about restrictions, these sorts of things. Now, it is 11:52, so we're in the final few minutes here of the Rob Snow Show with Pat Aguccione. He's managing editor, Ottawa Community Voice, and watches City Hall for us here on the Rob Snow Show. How are you today?
Good, thanks. Good morning.
You're bracing for the freezing rain, I guess, and the slop and whatever's coming our way.
But I'm working from home, so I don't have to get out in the elements.
Yeah, that's good. Sean Menard has tweeted 15 minutes ago. This is the councillor for Capital Ward. He is not a member of the Watson Club. He is like a far lefty, one of the downtown lefties, unapologetically one of the downtown lefties. I've had people asking me to run for mayor from all parts of Ottawa this term. I love serving Capital Ward. While I know the potential of this city, Catherine McKenney has committed to bringing that change. We need to unite and support behind them. My plan is to run again in Capital Ward. So I don't know. That just seems natural to me because those two are so aligned ideologically in a lot of their issues.
Yeah,
so
it shouldn't surprise anybody. I think when we saw Catherine McKenney come out and announce that someone like Sean would line up behind her, it was probably going to be either or. So they made the decision that it'd be Catherine.
Yeah. How do you like their chances, though?
Well, I think they'll have, their core vote will be in the core, but I don't, having lived in the suburbs and covered the suburbs, I'm not a lot of sort of NDP type support out in the suburbs. So I think it'll be a tough hoe out in those areas for sure.
Climate, bike lanes,
right?
Social justice issues, and don't get me wrong, she's a passionate speaker on all of those issues, cares deeply about them. I'm not discounting the issues.
Right.
I do discount their appeal in parts of Orleans and Canada and Stittsville and Richmond and whatever. So.
And I think they must know that. And Catherine McKenney is a good friend of mine. I've known her for forever. So wish her well, but she'll have a tough hoe in the suburbs. Okay. But she's very passionate, and if anybody can get that message out there, look, Canada voted for Alex Munter for years, so there's...
True enough, Pat. Yeah. Good point. Yeah, very good point. And Peggy Feltman, was a lefty, too, who was elected in the terms following Alex as well. So,
exactly.
Yeah, that's a good reminder there, actually.
Yeah.
Randall Denley, in his column for the Ottawa Citizen... he talks about the race is at least interesting because Jim is gone, because Jim was always won in a landslide, right? So it's an interesting race, but not everybody's declared yet. And Randall predicts that Matthew Fleury is going to declare, but is kind of playing it smart because he's going to wait until next year. Is that what you're hearing? And what do you think of that?
Well, I'm hearing the same thing other people are hearing, but I think you will see Matthew jump in the race. He's obviously, what people are looking for, a younger candidate and someone from a different demographic to, a francophone first. So, he'll add certainly another dimension, but a citywide perspective, or is he that well known around the city? Well, a campaign will help that, but right now I don't think his profile is what some of the others are.
Though he's a good campaigner, though.
Yeah.
I remember he came out of the guy was a lifeguard. And he defeated a titan of the council in George Bedard.
He knocked off George Bedard and has won convincingly in the next two elections for sure. Yeah, he's a good researcher. He researches issues well. Some people think he sort of balances on both sides of the fence, but he'll have to take stronger positions if he's running for mayor. But there's always the difficulty of raising money, and if there's 4 or 5 good candidates in the race going after the same money, he or she with the longest list, or they with the longest list, will have an advantage.
Do you think there's room for like a more established right of center candidate here? A lot of
I certainly do.
A lot of left-wingers running for mayor here.
There's a lot of work being done to attract a more right-of-center candidate. if you look at the records, I mean, Bob Shirley, when he was mayor, actually cut taxes one year. So I don't know if it's fair to say he's a lefty. I mean, in his last year, there was a 4% increase. I think half of that went to infrastructure. But hey, you don't usually see a sitting mayor raise taxes 4% to gain popularity. So, but I wouldn't put him in as far left as the other two candidates, but certainly more of a sort of a centrist for sure.
All right. Talk soon. Thanks, Pat.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Pat Aguccione.
Bye.
From the Ottawa Community Voice. We're back tomorrow after the 9 o'clock news. Sam Laprade will keep.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.